Yesterday we began with quiet sitting, focusing on the nostrils, which is a practice which requires an intention, the intention to keep your attention on the breath. It's something that you do. We can start today in a different way, just sitting in a relaxed, open way, and whatever occurs for you, just allow it to arise and pass. Whether it's feelings, sensations, thoughts, memories. We're not blocking anything that arises and not trying to push anything away, not merging into anything, but just being open with whatever occurs. Quickly in our time together. Yesterday we had something to do to focus on our breath. It's an active kind of practice. When you have an active practice, you, the subject, have an object that you want to bring your energy in relation to. Through that you can develop some power or some focus clarity on the basis of I am able to do this, and if I do it regularly I will see some signs of improvement. So it is a self-referential practice, essentially. It strengthens your sense of self so that you can start to open up and examine your sense of self. When you have a more passive practice, you're not doing anything, you're just sitting. All kinds of things are happening, sensations in the body, memories, some movement in the room. You don't have to do anything. You start to see that life is happening and you're not the center of it, and you're not the agent of making life happen, but the flow is always going on, a bit like going to the sea and you see the waves going and going and going, and at a certain moment you step into the water and you start moving with the waves. But the waves are there before you get in the water and they're going to be there after you get out of the water. So life is unfolding. And we take our place in the world, not as a victim, not as a servant, but not as a master. We're not in control, but we're collaborating. These two styles of practice have a long history. In the early transmission into Tibet, we had the famous discussion at Sami Monastery between the Chinese representative Huashan Mahayana, who presented this more pacific approach, and the more active approach presented by Kamala Shila. In the end, there was a decision that there should be a more active approach, that you should do something, because we are here wandering in samsara and we should get to some better place. So we go from here to there. It's a socially attuned kind of Dharma. There's nothing wrong with it, but the implications are there are the stages of the path, and if you do the work at the right time, you will progress up the path. So you go from here, your state of confusion, to enlightenment, which is somewhere else. You go from samsara to nirvana. In the more pacific approach, you're sitting, and the various experiences which arise, some of which look like the subject, this is me, some of which look like the object, I'm experiencing that, they arise and come and go. And by not fusing yourself into an identification with either, you see, oh, object is impermanent, subject is impermanent. When I fuse into it, when I identify, when I believe this is me or this is you, then you get a kind of solidification. And the more you have solidification, you get constrained. And the more constrained, you feel, I don't like this, I want it to be different, I have to do something different. Me, has to do something different. So it begins when you take the anxiety of feeling trapped in the patterning of your experience, you feel something must be done. And I have to do it. I have to take personal responsibility. So that leads you into the active path, and there are many, many, many practices in Tibetan Buddhism which are active. Breathing practices, bodily movement practices, visualizations of all kinds, in which you are developing something, like developing the visualization of a mandala in all its detail, learning to set up a shrine, doing your water bowls every day, doing prostrations and so on. There are endless things that you can do, which are virtuous, which take you away from negativity towards something positive. From the passive side, the critique of that would be, well, but you're always stuck with the sense of agency. You're doing it. And if you're doing it, it wouldn't happen unless you did it. And then you end up, it's a construct. How do you go from being enmeshed in confusion to freedom, where you have to free yourself? So how can I free myself? I am the one who frees myself. And the belief in the individual self is the basis of imprisonment. So I, the prisoner, this prisoner, want to be free, but because I am a prisoner, I can't be free. So you get a paradox. So this is where we should think a little bit about the relationship between wisdom and compassion. Another way of thinking about compassion is that it's method. A method means something that you do. We do the method only for the purpose of arriving at wisdom. Without wisdom, the method is just another kind of busyness. For example, just on the corner as we come in, there is a shop which is advertising that you can learn how to throw Viking axes. A remarkable thing to want to do. But Macclesfield is full of amazing possibilities. Why shouldn't you do that? The thing is, we are going to die. This body definitely will not last. We don't know when we're going to die. We imagine that we know who we are because we have narrative about ourselves. We can tell each other about who we are. But because that way of explaining ourselves varies according to circumstances, we realize that we are unreliable describers of our own existence because we give situationally specific descriptions. So, is there someone here who is not just the story of me being here? So, in that sense, you could say, well, is there a true self? What is this self? And we're going to look at that in some detail. Clearly, you woke up this morning somehow and started to get yourself together, and you arrive here more or less on time, and we begin a little bit late. And that's how life is. It unfolds with many different circumstances moving. Since you woke up, you've had a lot of experiences. That is to say, things have happened to you and you've experienced yourself doing things. Some pulsation of active and passive. But even when you're walking along the road, there is the sensation of the muscles tightening and slackening and so on, what you see, but you're also aware of walking along the road. So if you like, you've got a consciousness that's recording what's coming through the senses, and you've got a kind of meta-consciousness, a more overarching consciousness, so that I'm walking, I know that I'm walking, and I know that I know that I'm walking. So it's almost like an observing self that's keeping an eye on what's going on. And that's the basis for us being able to give a fairly coherent story about ourselves. This is what I did. This is what I plan to do. Some overarching viewpoint which reveals the particularities, and we're going to organize them and structure them. Wisdom is to see the true quality of the one who is the experiencer. The one who is the experiencer can appear to be I, me, myself, my egoic, individualized, separated sense of, well, this is just me. I don't know who you are, but I'm me. And we all have our own story about being ourselves. And the more we tell the story about being ourselves, the more we are aware that other people are really other. Because how you are is not me. That's our individualized or egoic point of reference. On the other hand, we are aware of our egoic construction. So the construction of I, me, myself, which we link as memories, intentions, sensations, and so on, this is a composite, but an ever-changing composite. That is to say, my ego identity seems to be continuous, and yet its content is ever-changing. Would that seem to fit your experience? You are, but how you're going to be, you don't really know. Something will happen, and you find yourself being in that way. So we can make an active statement, I am, but how I am, it depends. So we're both active and passive. There's a kind of pulsation in these movements. So one of the things we're going to really focus on is trying to see clearly who is the one who is acting, who is the one who walks and talks and eats and sleeps. What is the truth of subjectivity? So there are many different Dharma methods for trying to clarify this, for trying to remove the obscuration. A method is not an end result, it's a way of doing something. So when we adopt methods, they're not being presented as a truth, but as a way of trying to increase our, or rather, as a way of freeing us from some of the constrictions that we live within. So, for example, generally in Mahayana Buddhism, we have a sense that we are in samsara. There are 6 realms in samsara with all kinds of subdivisions, and that we wander in samsara. That's to say, we find ourselves born, we start to become aware that we're in a house with some people around us. They tell us who we are, they give us a name, and we sort of adapt to being with these big people, and gradually we become ourselves. This is your human life. This won't last forever, and then you die, and the propulsive tendencies, the karma, which means activity, which was engendered in this life and previous lives, takes you into another life. So we go from one existence to another existence, to another existence, to another existence. Finite existences, limited with their own shapes and colorations of feeling and so on. This is only possible because the mind itself is infinite. If the mind was just a thing, when you died, it would be over. You would have a materialistic version. I'm just me, this is me, and when I die, it's finished. You can do whatever you like with my body. You can cook it, make kebabs, I don't care, I'm gone. But if you have the sense that this is a mode of experience, and when you look outside, blackbirds are singing a lot just now, you see they have a mode of experience. And that to be a blackbird is to have very precise, particular concerns. They're on about something. We are on about something. The existence of the blackbird is truly meaningful for the blackbird. They inhabit it. You can see how they fly around and really interested. And you see the starlings, and starlings don't do the same as blackbirds. And robins don't do the same as these other 2 kinds of birds. And we just do what we do. So this is the particular formulation or construction of our identity. We can also have these other identities, because these are sentient beings. We live in a culture that privileges human beings over every other kind of living creature. But in Buddhism, we're thinking, may all sentient beings be happy. May the worms be happy. May the cockroaches be happy. May the snakes be happy. May everything that could terrify me or delight me be happy. So it's a much more open, receptive attitude to everything. And then we see, I also can be a cockroach. And if I was born as a cockroach, I'd have my little antennae looking around. What does the cockroach want? It wants to stay alive, and it wants to eat, and it doesn't want someone to eat it. We also like that. We want to have happiness. We don't want to have suffering. This is the basic communality of all sentient beings. But as the Buddha said, everywhere, all sentient beings, wherever they are, want happiness, but they find themselves behaving in ways which don't bring happiness. That in order to increase our sense of what will be meaningful for us, we take on behaviors which cause trouble. So, you can join the army. When there's high unemployment, lots of young men join the army. Then you're sent off to fight a war. You don't have a choice. You're a soldier. You have to obey order. You go to kill people. These people are the enemies of your country. Who has decided this? Someone in an office, somewhere in London. So now you have enemies, the enemies of the Queen. We are here to defend the Queen. So we go to kill these people because they are our enemies. They are good. And when the soldiers come back, people stand in the street and salute them, and the band plays, da-da-da-da-da-da, return of the murderers, da-da-da-da, thank you for being a killer, da-da-da-da, our glorious people who cut the throats of people, who shoot them. But if you're in the British Army, you can't cut throats. So when soldiers get angry because someone's shooting at them, we say, no, we will imprison our own soldiers. The Americans are more intelligent. They don't do that to their soldiers. They say, you are the dogs of war. Go and kill these fuckers, and we'll say you're very good, whatever you've done. But we don't do that, because we are noble British people. So we want to imprison our soldiers because they get angry and shoot the wrong people, or kill them in the wrong way. It's okay to shoot them if they have a gun in their hand, but if you beat the shit out of them because they just blew your friend up, that's a crime. Very difficult to be a soldier. But we believe we need soldiers. So they are heroes. There are statues of heroes all over the towns here. There's a big one at the end of the road. Our heroic boys who went and made this noble sacrifice, which involved killing other people. Is that good? Generally, in Dharma we say it's not good. So inside the frame of reference of being British, having our interest, having our colonies, going out and invading other people, including Iraq, for example, we have been quite involved in creating the shit in the Middle East, the Balfour Declaration and so on. We are deeply enmeshed in causing trouble in the world, but that's why we are Great Britain. Great Britain means great troublemaker in the world. And this is a fact. So, if you go into other people's country and you believe you are superior, you're going to bring them civilization. You are better than them. And you see, oh, this is ego identity. This is thought patterns, thought constructions on the basis of which you feel entitled to control other people. So in the 1850s, you have, from the British point of view, the Indian Mutiny. And from the Indian point of view, you have the First War of Independence. Completely different namings and readings of these events. For the Indians, the people who were fighting the British Army were freedom fighters. And from the British point of view, they were terrorists. And so when the British were successful in defeating them, they took the leaders and they tied them over the front of cannons, and they blew them to pieces so that there was blood and gore in all directions. Essentially to say, you think you're dangerous? Watch what we can do. We are much nastier than you. And that's how you have power. You put fear into people. The reason I'm describing this is so that we see it's very easy to be pulled into a temporary belief system that justifies disgusting behavior, that justifies torture, that justifies rendition, this secret catching of people and blindfolding them, putting a hood over their head and taking them to some place in the middle of nowhere where people can act on them to extract information. All this discussion about waterboarding and so on. But it's justified because they are our enemies. Why are they our enemies? Because we invaded their country. Britain fought in the Victorian period 3 wars in Afghanistan. We were defeated 3 times, but we don't give up. We go back with better weapons to cause more trouble for these people. Why? Because it's in our interest, our geopolitical interest. So when you start to see the sociology and economic and political matrices as they operate, you see, we are enslaved by ideas of nationality, that being born in a country gives me who I am. Anne Widdecombe is rejoicing. I saw her on the television. She is rejoicing in Brexit. We are now going to fulfill our destiny. But I don't have the same vision of destiny as Anne Widdecombe. So when she says our, she means hers, not mine. When we say our great country, make America great again, it means make America great again on my terms. So we have to be very careful that whenever you use a form of identity which you feel is inclusive, it's probably got quite a shadow area which is excluding other people. So that self and other, the divisions of inclusion and exclusion, are pulsating all the time. Friends and enemies being redesigned all the time. So the Buddha saw this very, very clearly. And especially as we looked last night, that the way friends become enemies and enemies become friends. But inside a limited frame, you think these truly are my enemies, and so I am entitled to kill them because they are my enemies. And then later they are my friends. So who was the enemy? Who was the bad guy? How do you find out who did these things? You know? After the Berlin Wall collapsed, where were the Stasi? Where were all the secret police in East Germany? They vanish, like in the morning light. The shadows fade away. Where were all the war criminals? They fade, they vanish. You never catch them. Very, very few. Because everything is in a new dispensation, in a new world. And that's why, with karma, we have to think, if I'm in a very narrow frame of reference, and I take this to be the whole truth, it's highly likely that the decisions I make, the behavior I enact, is going to lead me astray and cause trouble for other people, because I don't see the whole picture. So another way of looking at that is to say, when we become conscious of something, there is a something to be conscious of. There is a particular entity or identity that I am conscious of, I'm able to think about and reflect on. I'm being pulled into an interest in the particularities of this country or this person or this political party, and I develop my opinion about it. There you have subject and object moving together, and that's what creates karma. Karma arises because of believing that subject and object truly exist. This is the basis of it. Secondly, you have the intention. This object is good, I want more of it. This object is bad, I want to harm it or control it or I want to steal, I want to murder, I want to marry, or there'll be some intention. Then thirdly, there is the enactment, where you perform into your belief, and then you have the result of that, where you conclude, I'm glad I did that. And when these four factors operate together, then you get a full alignment with your decision. And the consequence of that is that there is an excess charge, so that the moment of our action is not the end, but there's a tilt, a tendency, a slight off-balanceness, which manifests in our stream of experience sometime later, and we find ourselves in a particular situation. So what this is suggesting is we are the agents of our own existence. On the basis of how we have behaved in the past, we find ourselves in this body. On the basis of how we behave now, we will give rise to different kinds of existence in the future. Because this world is a shaping. We are not a fixed essence. There is no true me deep inside. I am a performativity. That is to say, I am energy and reflection and planning arising in response to different situations. My life is dynamic and active. That's what karma means, activity. And when the individual ego arises, it finds itself inevitably pulled into activity. So, when we're thinking about methods, we're trying to give ourselves the chance to loosen the limiting boundary that we feel around our own identity. This is me. I, me, myself. This is who I am. So, I am British, I'm white, I'm male. There are various things you could see as fixed reference points. But of course, their value changes over time. When my dad was retired, he walked about and smiled at people in Glasgow, quite a friendly town, and he was a respectable old man. When I walk about in my local park and I look at the children playing, because I enjoy seeing children playing, I see the mums looking at me as if I'm a potential paedophile. Why are you looking at my children? So I personally haven't done anything to children, but the zeitgeist, the cultural framework of interpretation has shifted. And that's what we find. Without doing anything yourself, the matrices of interpretation shift, and some people are elevated up and some are put down. So if you're wanting to be an actor at the moment, being young, female and black is a good thing. Being middle-aged and white and male is not a good thing. And more plays are being written because the culture is changing. Britain is re-identifying itself, what it means to be British. And these changes go on and on and on. So, how will I be? When you try to think about how shall I behave, what are the rules of engagement, it's very difficult. There are so many variables. Which is why in meditation, we're trying to relax ourselves out of the idea it's all up to me. My life is my responsibility and I have to work out what to do. Because that way of identifying yourself is very lonely. It's very lonely. Everybody's wandering around in their little bubble worlds. How shall I live? What will I do? We have consumerist choice. Which objects will I take into my sphere in order to make me happy? What will it be for? So, in terms of method, from the Mahayana point of view, we say, all sentient beings have been my mother in a previous life. I have been born many, many times. And in each of these lives, I have had a mother. And each of these mothers have done many things to help me. In fact, Some of the mothers, in order to feed me and clothe me, had to engage in bad action. Maybe they stole, maybe they had to put themselves in danger. And due to these actions that they made for their children, including me, they have accumulated bad karma. Therefore, I have a duty of obligation to them. Now, this is a very interesting way of thinking. Whether you believe it or not as a kind of fundamental truth, if you adopt it as a method and see how it shifts your view, when you're sitting here and you look around, I have a duty of care to everyone here, and not only in this room, but outside in the street. I have a duty of care to Viking axe throwers, because they have been my mother in a previous life. I am already in debt to these people. So this is a very interesting thing, because very often we have this idea of a top-down compassion. I, who have this clarity, am going to help these poor lost beings. So I'm somehow elevated by the goodness of my heart. But if you take this reading of the situation, I am in debt to these people. All my compassion, all my kindness, all my good deeds is merely repaying that debt. This is an antidote to ego inflation, to hubris, to pride. Because the goal is always equanimity and evenness. Although there is the diversity of appearance, everything has the same basic nature. All beings have Buddha nature. So if your Dharma practice leads you into a place where you feel that you are a better person than other people, it's going in the wrong direction. So you can see there are these many, many methods to correct the idea of being special. If all beings have Buddha nature, and enlightenment depends on Buddha nature, then everybody has what is required. There are adventitious obscurations. That is to say, at a certain point, something arose which created some veil, some confusion, and so we don't recognize who we actually are. And inside this not knowing, we carry out our various actions which create more obscuration. But the basis for awakening is already there. It is not something to be constructed. Nobody has a better nature, a better Buddha nature than anyone else. So it says in some of the Mahayana texts, why do you say that Buddhas are better than sentient beings? Without sentient beings, there would be no Buddhas. Buddha and sentient being is the same thing, because the sentient beings becomes Buddha when they recognize that they are Buddha. As long as they think they're a sentient being, they don't recognize their own Buddha nature. The intrinsic, that which is already there, is pure and luminous and radiant and full of connectivity. That which is not intrinsic, that which has arisen due to causes and circumstances, is limited, dull, isolationist, self-protective, and so on. That is to say, our limitations are constructed and our freedom is innate. So if we stop making limitations, our intrinsic freedom and liberation will show itself. So from this point of view, it's not that you have to work to make yourself enlightened. You have to stop doing the work that keeps you unenlightened. So it shifts the orientation. Enlightenment is not the fruit of a constructive journey, but it's more like the unpeeling. When you have a banana and you look at it, you don't want to bite into the skin. It doesn't taste very nice. So you have to unpeel it. And then you find, oh, here is something to eat. But of course, when you look at a banana tree, You see, oh, supporting this big bunch of bananas, and then you cut into the banana tree and you find there is layer and layer and layer, like an onion. There is no essence to the banana tree. So on an outer level, it looks like we are peeling off the skin to find what is there. On an inner level, when you start peeling off the layers, you find there is nothing there. There is no inherent existence. There is no true essence to sentient beings. Our essence is Buddha nature, and Buddha nature is awareness of emptiness. That is to say, the ground of all of our presence here today is ungraspable. When we are desperate, we want to grasp. So we grasp at something. In Tibetan they say tak zin. Zimba means to take hold of something, to apprehend it. And that means a sense of self, but it also means a true existence. It could be in stones or motor cars or people or dogs, but I see something there. It's the somethingness, and I take hold of that somethingness. If I don't take hold of the somethingness, what is the somethingness of the something? When we allow ourselves to see what is there, when we let phenomena reveal themselves, we find that they have nothing graspable in them. And that the grasping was always a mental activity. So for some people, Brexit will be a glorious thing. And for other people, it will be a terrible thing. What is it? It's a set of shifts in laws and regulations and freedoms, and you might need to get a visa to go to different countries. It's a set of activities. Life is patterned through activity, subject onto object, object onto subject. And this patterning shift according to socio-political factors, economic factors. This pattern is there, then that pattern is there. And what was the truth of it? What was it to be in Europe? It was alignment, that is to say, to bring your energy of manifestation into a particular pattern, as if you were playing in the school orchestra and you have to look at the teacher. Oh, I have to do this now, because the whole orchestra should be in the same place at the same time. So that's all that, in a sense, the EU was. It was some kind of disharmonious orchestra, often having cacophony. Why should we fit in? We want the benefit, but we don't want the cost of fitting in. Everybody's doing the same thing. Whether it's Poland or Hungary or Britain or France, everybody's trying to cut a special deal for themselves. Where's the essence of it? You don't find anything. So, when we say all sentient beings have been our mother in a previous life, what we're doing is moving from inclusion, exclusion, to infinite inclusion. I open myself to all beings. I have no restriction. That is to say that the manifest qualities of beings are not the truth of them. So we know when we interact with people, some people are easier to talk to, some people may be of a social interest to you or a sexual interest to you. There's all kinds of ways in which you can seek intimacy or distance on the basis of your perception of the qualities and value of the other. From this position, this looks good to me, that doesn't look so good to me. What is the truth of that? That's my experience, my interpretation. Someone else will have a different experience. Torturers have relationships. They have kids. They come home, they have a shower, they play with their kids. Why wouldn't they do that? We know that in the concentration camps, the officers would go and listen to some Schumann in the evening and play with their kids after doing amazingly horrible things during the day. How is that possible? Because they were not one thing. They were polyphonous. They had many different plays inside them. So if we say, you are a terrible person, not for their wife and kids. They brought in money. They gave them a nice life. But that is irrelevant. No, that's very relevant, because complexity is the fact of our existence. And when you look at the complexity of people, it helps you to see there is no inherent existence. There are no good people or bad people. These attributions are made on the basis of function. So, in camps like Auschwitz, there was a triage, an assessment process. When the people arrived in the cattle truck, somebody's at the door saying, you go to this side, you go to that side. There was a very rational basis for that. We want workers, we want people with certain skills, and we don't want the old and we don't want the sick, so they should go and be killed immediately. They were doing, in an extreme form, what we do all the time. We say, I like, I don't like. This has value for me, this person makes me feel good, this person is useless for me. So all the time, we're doing this triage, this sorting, on the basis of our own personal hierarchy of values. What function could you have for me? In what way could you make me happy? In what way could you make me sad? So, there are lots of lonely old people in Macclesfield. Would you like to adopt a granny and go and see them every day to see that they're okay? Well, that would be a good idea, but I'm actually quite busy myself, because it would be a bit of a burden. And I know that they're unhappy, and I'm happy to light a candle and pray for them, but I don't want to go and fucking visit them every day. So I don't want to burden myself. When we're self-referential, we see that we absolutely embody particular ways of sorting out what will help me and what will not help me. We want to be for the other on our own terms. So then we say, oh, I'm quite a complicated person. I can't always do what I would like to do, because there's a bit of me that doesn't want to do it. And the more you see that about yourself, that is one way of loosening your total definition about who you are. I am like this. And I'm like this in this situation. So who am I? If the content of who I am varies and changes in situations, and the value of other people for me rests on my particular interest in them, maybe you meet someone here and they do some activity that you know about or also participate in, you have some bridge, you have some sense of more connectivity, and so it's easy to talk to them. And then you're talking with someone else and you find, wow, their life is very different from yours, and you don't have bridges, you don't really have very much to say. So you want to spend more time with a person it's easy to talk to. I mean, that's normal human life. We're accentuating what confirms my sense of who I am. So what's important here is to see these are just the waves on the ocean. The ocean is the Buddha nature. All beings have this infinite depth, this infinite awareness, but the surface qualities of appearance, education, sense of humor, and so on that cause us to get close or further away, these are fragile and shifting and unreliable. So, if our relationship with other people is entirely mediated through our own ego concern, I want to be close to you because you make me feel good, and I don't want to be close to someone else because I don't feel at ease with them, then you see how partiality comes in. So I really like you and I want to be with you, and now I don't like you so much because now I've spent more time with you, I see what you're really like, and actually I think I'm going to back off a bit. So many people nowadays have that experience in relationships. You feel this is really going to work, and then the life energy bleeds out of it, and then you try something else and try something else. We are fickle. Now, you could say that's a bad thing, as we were looking yesterday. I need to be more disciplined. I need to keep my vows. I need to keep my commitments. My word is my bond. If I said I'm going to be with you, I'm going to be with you. But actually, I can't bear being with you. You are not who I thought you were. The person I liked was the person I imagined you to be. And now, you're something else. So there we see patterning formation. Because there is no essence as an individual, there's no guaranteeing line that I will always be like this, because I change according to circumstances. People are fundamentally unreliable. You could see that as a bad thing, and therefore they should try harder. But from the meditation point of view, we are energy. We are potential of energy manifesting in different forms, and these patterns arise due to many different factors. Some, if you like, karmic, historical, some through our family dispositions, our education, whether we get sick or not, the particular configurations of the people around us. But we are flowing and moving. We are not solid. We are not things. We are unfoldings of patterning of energy. Now, when you recognize the Buddha nature, this unborn, infinite openness of your presence, that you're here, and you see moving inside that the patternings of subjectivity and your own sense of being an object as well, that these are pulsing and changing all the time. Awareness doesn't change. It is reliable. But personality, emotion, feeling, longing, hopes, fears, these are very unreliable. So if I take refuge in the content of my mind, in my constructs, as the Buddha said, all compounded things are impermanent. They are devoid of inherent existence. So when we create our image of the other person and we think we know who they are, this is a self-delusion, because people show themselves in different ways at different times. This is what we're actually engaging with. So that's why we don't take refuge in people, we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, or Guru Devadakini, or Three Kayas. We don't take refuge in personality. Personality is unreliable. So, when I engage with other people, and I like some people more because of the shape of their body, or their personality, or that they're friendly to me, what I'm doing is blinding myself to the fact that all beings have Buddha nature. The most important things about beings is their awareness, not their personality. But when you have no awareness yourself of the open ground of your being, when you imagine that you are just this person, and I know what I like and I know what I don't like, and I don't want to have to put up with horrible things, then you find yourself trying to manipulate the patterning of your world to get more of what you like and less of what you don't like. That makes absolute sense. But the Buddha says, well, check it out over time. How successful have you been in having life on your terms? Now we're leaving Europe. We're not going to have Brussels telling us what to do. So we're going to be able to make our own laws. Who is going to make our own laws? Our noble members of Parliament. These members of Parliament are people of the highest ethical standards. These are people with brilliant minds and beautiful hearts. We're at the mercy of dogs. That's an insult to dogs. We're at the mercy of idiots who have got into these positions because they wanted power. So we are, in what way, free? Who shall you have to get rid of in order to be free? Who are the limiting factors? This is the basis of war. If we get rid of the bad guys, then we'll all be good together. But the more bad guys you get rid of, the more you realize the people who you thought were good become bad. So, when you had the Protestant Revolution, which arose with Martin Luther, the Pope, very bad, selling these indulgences, corruption, and so on. So let's not have that. And then a little bit later, you have Jean Calvin from France in Geneva, sets it up. No, Luther was wrong, da, da, da. And now you have a lot of different Protestant sects. You have the Plymouth Brethren, you have all sorts of small groupings that say, we have the truth, and the rest, they're being taken hold of by the devil. Why is that? Because in terms of the Catholics, the Protestants are good. But in terms of the Calvinists, the Lutherans are not so good. And the Baptists, for goodness sake. So, if you just look at life, that's what you see. Is that inside and outside inclusion, my people, are you one of us? That's very, very powerful. And if you're not one of us, you're one of them. And if you're one of them, well, we know what you're like. So this is what you can observe in your own mind. And it's around all the time. In politics, in sport, everywhere. The desire to find the best and get rid of the bad. The best for me, the bad for other people. So we export our rubbish to other countries to take care of. So in the beaches of Nigeria, you can see all barrels of chemicals that have been sent by Britain because we don't want to have them. All these things containing mercury and so on, go and dump it on third world countries so that we will be happy and free and we will not have pollution. Our thinking is self-referential. And on the basis of that, we have all kind of discriminations of who's an ally and who isn't. So Buddha nature is a very radical idea. It says that the surface phenomena, which are the basis of your utility for me or your non-utility for me, this is very, very thin. Look to how it actually is, which is unborn, that is to say, nothing has come into true separate existence. Everything is radiant and shining. And judgments move through this like clouds in the sky. The sky is always open. When the sky is grey, it is open and full of greyness. If the sky wasn't open, if the sky became closed, how would the clouds get in? It is the openness of the sky that allows the clouds to be there and the rainbows to be there and the open blueness to be there according to circumstances. The sky itself is not constrained by whether there are clouds or not. Or in the traditional example of the mirror, when you look in a mirror, you see different kinds of reflection. The mirror shows so many reflections without being determined by the mirror. No reflection determines the value of the mirror. If you looked in a mirror and you saw something you didn't like, it would be crazy to destroy the mirror. The mirror is merely the arena within which there is the showing of the reflection. The reflection is in the mirror. It's very intimate with the mirror, but it does not define the value of the mirror. So when we take this into the meditation, and you find yourself suffused with negative thoughts or self-attacking thoughts or hateful thoughts, whatever kind of thoughts you have, rather than entering into a judgment on top of the thought, our practice is to relax and be open and allow whatever is coming to come. It arises and it passes. It arises and it passes. And the more you do that, you see, it doesn't leave any trace. Our mind is actually like the mirror. It's a very traditional example. But your ego self is not like a mirror. Your ego self is absorbent. So your ego is pulsating between being a tissue and being Teflon. We seal on certain points to keep experiences out that we don't like, and then we completely absorb and merge into identification with other experiences. It's a very discontinuous and irregular kind of experience. But when we see, phenomena arise and pass, they arise and pass. And I, as this presence, am not affected. I don't need to identify with these thoughts or feelings or to disidentify with them, because they just come and go by themselves. If I don't get involved, they come and they go. Everything comes and goes. Since you woke up this morning, thousands of experiences have arisen for you. They came and they went. Bending down to put your shoes on, standing up, going and getting a cup of tea or coffee. All of these experiences were there, fully there, and then gone. This is what life is. It's this process of the unfolding of the revelation of the mind itself. This is the mind. This is experience. All you ever get is experience. Who is the experiencer? This is the mind itself. But when you have no awareness of the mind itself, it's just me in the midst of my experiences, hopes and fears, happy and sad. You go into a little cafe and you get a terrible cup of coffee. How is it possible? How could they do this? Well, they just do it. That's what they make. They make terrible coffee. But they shouldn't. But they do. But why are they allowed to? Because they are. There's no end to thinking about disappointments and frustrations and dissatisfactions. We experience mental turbulence. So if you take that image of the water, the waves on the top of the water are moving, and the depth of the sea is calm, at least in the metaphor. Oceanography would disagree, but for our point of view, the depth of the ocean is very calm, and the surface waves are moving. So we want to find the spaciousness which is without bias, because that's the basis of kindness. Kind is linked to kin. Kind means our kind of people, our kin, those we are related to. And when we say all sentient beings have been our mother in a previous life, we are all linked. There is nobody who is a stranger to me. I am always already involved in the life patterning of all other creatures, however they are. Therefore, how I could manifest is for the other. And we'll come back to this later. But if I am an awareness within which subject and object is moving, and I sit in the practice without involvement, I start to see I could be anything. I don't have to be a fixed me for me, because this arises and that arises and that arises. So I can be different people. Not for me. I don't need to be anyone for me, because I just am. But our manifestation then is compassion. How we are is for the other. For the other. So who is the other? How will I be for you? Not how am I, as if I was something, because I have no fixed pattern. Since you woke up this morning, your identity has shifted and shifted and shifted. So there is no self-referential point except the idea of I, me, myself. You come back to an abstract signifier as the way of absorbing certain factors of experience. But they dissolve, and the pattern dissolves, and the pattern dissolves. So if I can be many, many things, what is the motivation? Because if I am for you, then me for you is me. I don't lose anything by being for you. So if you're playing with little kids, you do some funny things on the carpet and you roll balls around, and at a certain point you get bored and you see that they're not bored. And you think, oh, kids are boring, that's one reading. Or, how come I'm getting bored? Why am I not infinitely fascinated to put the red brick and the yellow brick and the blue brick and the green brick and then knock them down? Do it again, do it again, do it again. Oh, where has your mind gone? You think of something else. You enter into judgment. And the little kid there don't know at all. They're looking at the colour of the bricks and they like the whack and they fall down and clack, clack, clack. So we alienate ourselves from the moment by our thought. We're too smart for our own good. So if we want to participate with other people, it's about how do I bring out of my potential what is required for the moment. So between the openness of the situation, the unique specificity of the other person in this moment, and our potential, there comes this veil of obscuration, like a dark planet. And as our intention moves towards the other person, the gravitational force of this planet of our personality, our history, our personal existence, bends our intention and puts a kind of twist on it, so that we end up being kind to other people because we like them, and ignore other people because we don't like them, or they're not significant for us. And so instead of having an availability for the other as other, it gets turned into a self-referential activity, which is extremely sad. Because the personal gain that you have is always vanishing. Which is why in Mahayana practice, at the beginning we all say, may all beings be happy, I'm going to do this for the sake of others. While we're doing the practice, we remember all sentient beings, and at the end we dedicate the merit, so that it doesn't become something just for me. Just for me-ness is the quality or the feeling tone of the ego self. May all beings be happy in an infinite way. This is the quality of the Buddha nature. As soon as you're aware of that, don't do anything, just be with the thought, the thinking about, and it will vanish. All thoughts are impermanent, all sensations are impermanent, all feelings are impermanent. So, if you stay unmoving, everything moves through. But if you move, if your mind moves into involvement, partiality, and so on, then you're in this endless entangling construction and deconstruction that goes on. So all that we have to do is just be here. That's all that's required. And offer the space of potential to whatever's arising in it. In this way we move from an egoic partiality to a kind of observing position to a simple open awareness. For some people this is quite easy to do, for some other people it takes a lot of practice. By practice, we're not practicing to do something, we're practicing to release our energy of arousal. When you carry a lot of anxiety inside yourself, or insecurity and doubts about who you are and so on, these tensions feed into internal commentary and judgment and evaluation. Am I doing okay? Are they doing okay? How am I with them? And so there's a lot of adjusting that goes on. And so we just take this idea of hospitality. It's just everything is welcome. Everything is welcome. Come as you are. This thought comes, seems happy, it's happy, gone. And so, like a mirror, you're not editing, you're not manipulating or controlling. You're just saying, this is a space of appearance, And the appearance comes and goes. Okay, we try this for a little. The development of karma. That firstly, the ground or the basis of it is subject and object as two separate entities from which we develop an intention. Intention to gain benefit and avoid harm. So there's a pragmatic clarity in that. It's a kind of transactional sort of relating that we want to have some kind of benefit or at least equity, something equable that should be going on. We want life to be fair. And if we can get some advantage, we can, but basically we're concerned that things should balance out. Financially, this comes out in terms of fair exchange is no robbery. I'll give you this, you give me that. So if I give you something, I want to make sure that you give me something of equal value back so that things balance out. This operates as well, of course, in Buddhism in all kinds of ways. Various sorts of trade-offs that go on. The problem with trade and exchange is that it reduces everything to a kind of false equal, and that you have to be evaluating what you're getting in return. So, for example, here there's no charge for Dharma. It costs a bit of money to rent the room, so there's a charge for the event and so on. But in terms of the teaching, there's no charge, because the basic idea is always that Dharma should be free. If it's free, then it's freely given. And so you get the gift of the Dharma, just as I received from many teachers in India a long time ago, the gift of the Dharma. The teachers I met at that time, they were refugees. Many of them had just come over the border from Tibet, living often in very insecure settings, and yet always completely available to give teaching. And there was never, ever any charge for it at all. And that's because the flow of Dharma should be unimpeded. There shouldn't be any restriction on who can come, who can receive. It's always, if you're interested, the door is open. So, when I was introducing the last meditation we did, I was saying it's about hospitality. Hospitality is the basic mood of everything. In Sanskrit, we have this word dharmadhatu, the openness or the space of all dharmas, of all phenomena. There is space enough for everything. So the mood that we want to have in ourselves is one of infinite generosity, that we can give and give and give. And the miracle of this is, the more you give, and you don't count the cost of the giving, the ego pot crumbles in its fixity, and you find yourself having more and more resources. You become like a mountain spring that is just self-replenishing and self-replenishing. When you give from the position of the ego, you're thinking, okay, what do I get back? Because the ego is like an accountant. It's always trying to balance the books and make sure that it doesn't lose out. Is it fair? I don't want to be an idiot. I don't want to be exploited. But awareness is just open. It's open to whatever comes. There is no barrier. So, we have the dana system, which means that you can offer something. You can offer it as 100 smiles to strangers. You can offer an appreciation of the flowers and the gardens of Macclesfield. You can make a commitment. As I walk around Macclesfield, I'm going to allow myself to see people's gardens. Nice. I'm going to receive what they've done. They make their bloody garden, they put all the effort into it, and you just walk by. So that's also a form of dana, that you give yourself to the world as it is. It's not about a transaction. And I think it's so important that transactional thinking, that is egoic thinking, it's about How am I doing? Am I winning or losing? We have the 8 worldly concerns, profit and loss, success and failure, fame and notoriety. These are the positions where you're evaluating, can I get a bit of a profit on this? Am I ahead of the game? And it's that mentality that brings us into a fixation in the small. Whereas if you just give, whatever it would be, it could be a smile, it could be a friendly gesture, and you're not concerned with the return, then it just flows out. It flows out. There's a famous Mahayana text, which we have a translation of in this recent book, Finding Freedom. It's called The Sharp Weapon Wheel, in which karma is described as almost a kind of boomerang thing, that you put something out and then the result comes back to you. And that's the transactional nature of karma. You think you've got away with it, but actually it comes back. Whereas if you're really gifting, it's non-transactional. It transcends balancing the books. So it's a particular quality of generosity. And of course, Shantideva in the Entering the Path of the Bodhisattva describes this in great detail. And it's always useful to read the Mahayana texts because they are so beautiful in the imagery and the depth of the understanding that if you keep offering, you become the cornucopia. So in Tibetan they have many words for the possibility of always giving. For example, the ever lactating cow, the cow that gives milk all the time, 24 hours a day. So that is the Buddha nature. Buddha nature is always aware. It has no limit. It's not creating any boundary. And then we hear that and we observe ourselves and we think, how come it's not like that for me? How come I'm anxious and wondering, are they taking the mickey? Are they exploiting me? What is this? And we get into this attention to the minutiae because we need to win. And again in Mahayana text it says, give victory to the other. Let the other have success. If somebody steals your money, may they enjoy it. They should be punished. Karma is going to punish them. We don't have to do that. But when you take people to law and you prosecute them, then you want justice. You want to balance the books. But the books never balance. And so we get very, very upset. This traditional English warfare about garden fences and people parking their cars in the wrong place. And they shouldn't do it. And I'm not going to let them get away with it. But the question for meditators is, why is it bugging me? Why am I upset because somebody's got a tree that puts shade on my garden? But I want the sunshine. They want the tree. Let them win. But then I'm missing out. I'm missing out. So whenever it comes back into this self-referentiality, it starts to compound. It starts to get more dense, more solid, more fixed, and we take up a position. So the practice of generosity is enormously important because it allows us to see whether we are grounded in our fixity of me first, or whether we found the spaciousness that allows an infinite supply of generosity to others. I remember years ago being in Kathmandu, in Bodhanath, and old Lama, head Nyingmapa Lama at the time, Dujun Rinpoche was there, and he gave many, many initiations over many weeks. He was very, very frail. And when he came in and he's sitting on his seat to start the initiations, it's as if he's suddenly transformed and this huge amount of energy is flowing out of him. And then at the end, he's like a poor old man. And so in situations like that, you can see that if you allow Dharma to flow through you, there is no limit. But if you're thinking about yourself, if he had started from the position, well, I'm old and I'm tired and why should I, and I'd like to retire, that's not possible. Because if you have the resources, then you make them available. Because it's for the other. And this is the central point. The self is empty. And so if you build your house on the self, there's nothing there. And you've been protecting a house of ghosts. There's nobody in that house. Whereas if you tilt your life towards the other, and what can I make available for them, this very act puts you in touch with the infinity of your own capacity. We transcend ourselves by being for the other. And when we're self-protective, not only do we abandon the other, but we abandon our own potential. So everything goes in the right direction when we practice generosity. So, being kind to others, being available for others, is no loss. The fact is, in this room, we're here together, we look at each other, and when you see someone else, they are revealed to you. You see them, they don't see themselves. None of us can see our own face. We can't see our own body. We certainly can't see our back. Our embodiment, in a sense, is showing us we're for the other. We're here and we're out. Whereas if you start to think, well, I'm for me, you can't hide yourself from the other. And you can't protect yourself from the other either. Somebody smiles at you and you feel good, you feel welcomed. Somebody frowns at you and you feel a bit more insecure. We are revealed through our interaction with others. So being for the other is not a loss of self, because actually you are my world. You are all I've got. I look at you and this is my life now. Here, on a Saturday morning, this is all there is. There may be other things going on outside this room, but for our purposes, this is it. So, how we are here gives us the sense of how our existence is. If we are small and self-referential, we get a small life. And if we are open to other people and wishing them well, then it's as if it's a kind of expander which allows us to include others. You are welcome. And I'm not welcoming you into my territory. Each of us is welcoming everyone else into their world. We're not the owners of the world, but we are participants. And so if we welcome each other, you have a fellow feeling. You have the common good, because we share this space in common. Space cannot be owned. The space of presence doesn't belong to anyone. So again, it always comes back to this question of inclusion and exclusion. Who is not one of us? It's very difficult to get away from that. In the Tibetan language, you have Chipa and Nongba, that's insider and outsider. So Buddhists were insiders, and Kachi, the Muslims in Lhasa, they were the outsiders. So inside, outside is a very, it's a very primitive, in the sense of a very basic way of understanding our world. My family, my religious grouping, my ethnic grouping. Because the ego seeks belonging. It wants a safe place to be. For the ego, there is no safe place. The ego is a delusion. And delusion means that if you're trying to create something which will be reliable, you're going to be disappointed. All compounded things are impermanent. We can see in this town there's still so many old factories. And we imagine the effort building them, getting all the bricks, bringing them on horse carts and so on, creating these huge edifices which then start to crumble, covered in pitch and shit. It's just unloved, and at one time they would have been a source of pride. All egoic formations are like that. And on the basis of wanting to have your possessions, we sacrifice the welfare of others. We put ourselves first, and then all that we had created vanishes, just vanishes away. Whatever you build up, it goes. So we have to be thoughtful about what we create and what its function is, that it is transient and temporary. Excuse me. Milarepa, this famous yogi, he said that our life is just like a meeting of nomads. They gather together for a while on a big plain, and they have their cattle, and they put up their tents, and they have enjoyment together, singing and dancing, and then it's time to move on, and they disperse, and all that's left is a few stones with black burnt marks on them. Everything's here, and then it's gone. And it'll be like that when we die. A few people will remember us for a while, and then they will vanish. And it's as if this life had never been. And you think of all the things that are so important to you, and all the things that you sacrifice in order to make these things happen. Was it worthwhile? Oh, this is a major thing, isn't it? Stones endure, but people vanish. But our life is with people and with animals. If you have dogs or cats, if you're concerned to feed the birds in the garden, it's a relational activity, and how you relate to living things is very different from how you relate to inanimate things. Especially inanimate things as possessions, because the idea of commodities, commodification, winning and losing is very, very powerful for us. And when we start to see human beings as commodities, then we realize that we can be completely forgetful of the lived subjectivity of other people and incorporate them entirely into our sense of their value and usage. So we have slavery. Britain made a lot of money out of slavery, going to a country, grabbing people, putting them in chains, putting them on ships and selling them. And we know that this kind of slavery continues with Boko Haram in northern Nigeria and so on, in many, many places in the world. There's wage slaves, there's sexual slavery, there's all kinds of ways in which the value, the immediacy of this living sentient being is annihilated, because I want you to be for me on my terms. So this is where darkness comes into our world, where we see someone as something, and something which could be of value to me, so I'm going to take on a utilitarian approach to you. You are a means to an end, and I'm going to make sure that you give me what I need and what I want. So I'm going to manipulate you. And we see this operating again and again. So it's always, the issue is when we see someone, somebody, some person, is that who is there? We've grown up in our culture, indoctrinated into the idea that there are truly existing people. It seems automatic. Think this is a man, this is a woman, they have these qualities and so on. From the Buddhist point of view, it's entirely a delusion. On the general Theravadan point of view, we say that Pudgala or Gangsa people, persons, have no inherent existence. That we are the meeting place of these 5 skandhas, the 5 heaps, that we have form, feeling, tone, perceptions, associations, consciousness, And when these 5 factors are operating, they generate our sense of being a person. We know that we have in our body lungs and heart and liver and kidneys and so on. When they collaborate, when there is harmony and function between these aspects, then we have a functioning body. The body is the manifestation of the communication between the aspects. A liver on its own doesn't do very well because the liver needs to have a blood supply. All the parts of the body are not autonomous zones, they are dependent. Our teeth, with their roots and the nerves, are connected with the heart. You know, there are so many connections in the body that we're hardly aware of. What we call my body is not a thing, although you can treat it like a thing, but it's a site of incredibly complex communication. And it's functioning with air coming in and out through our breath, all the sensations coming in through our senses. So there is no individual personhood. The idea of the word individual means undivided or indivisible. But we are very divisible. We can have operations and bits of us cut out and so on. You can have car crashes where you lose your legs and so on. But also in our psychological function, we're very divisible. We are not a unitary subject. So again and again we have to look at the relation between our assumptions, our culturally formulated assumptions, and the actuality of our existence. That this glass, unless I break it, will continue to be a glass. It's a glass in the morning, it's a glass in the afternoon. We call it a glass and there's a stability to it. But if we say this is a James in the morning and James in the afternoon is not the same. The Jamesness of James is communication. There is no individual James. I exist in communication with the world. So James as something, as an individual, an autonomous unit, a monad, an individual subject, that is delusion. Without you, how would I be? Imagine if I was suddenly to be walled in here, bricked inside. That would be very frightening. I would have no more contact with other people. What would be the meaning of my existence? We exist to communicate, to connect. This is the aspect of compassion which is intrinsic to us, that each person is participating in their way, engaging through giving and receiving, giving and receiving. So, the body is not a thing, the mind is not a thing, speech is always flowing and changing. We are dynamic, we are movement in a field of movement, and this movement never ceases. So, when we say, may all beings be happy, we mean, may all these fluctuating patterns of appearance be freed of the burden of believing that they are self-existing entities. When we think, I exist, I'm just me, it's as if I'm self-existing. Because when we reflect, we think, well, I've always been me. It wasn't somebody else, I'm just me. Since you were a little kid, just been you. Your parents know where you came from. You might not exactly want to know where you came from in that area, but anyway, you have causes, many causes to you being you, but I'm just me. So if you reflect on that for yourself, that you are living with the delusion that there is a continuing self-substance. This substance may be so subtle, it may be a quintessence, a very, very fine essence. But still there's a sense of I'm me. There's something about me that's me. So we become self-referential. But what are we referring to? I want people to like me. Does that mean I want them to like my spleen? Do I want them to like my large intestine? If I didn't have a large intestine, I would be in trouble. But that's nothing to do with you. So I want you to like me in terms of the bits of me that I want you to see. So I want you to like the image of me that doesn't reveal the fact of the snot up my nose and the wax in my ears. Just the nice me. So in that way, I can't even accept myself because I want to have a particular kind of appearance. And nowadays, people are unbelievably concerned with appearance. There are so many beauty products, so many kinds of deodorants and shampoos and stuff in order to maintain the idea that I can create the image of myself that I want you to believe in. But who am I? Because I am also someone with bowels, with a rectum. I shit and I piss. That's also part of it. So what will I do with that? What will I do with the complexity of my lived existence? If I can't accept it, and accepting it means I'm definitely going to die, because if I am in touch with how my body actually is, I know that at one time I was a little kid running around doing things, and then my body's changed, and my body's changed, and it's on the way out. This body is now vanishing for me anyway. That's how it goes. So who am I? I am not this body. And of course, simultaneously, I am this body. This body is the showing or the display or the mode of participation of awareness. Does that make sense? So you find yourself doing things. Now you can strongly identify with the doing. I am the agent. But we're always acting in a field. Whether you're knitting or cooking, whatever activities you do, it's always me and you. Me and these items, me and these other people. Me alone is not much. Me alone is pretty empty. But me and you, me and my shoes, me and doing some gardening, me and talking with different people, I am revealed to me through you. You are the revelation of me for me. Through meeting here with different people, having different kinds of conversation, different aspects of yourself are allowed to surface. And if you spent the whole day just by yourself, other patterns of yourself would surface. So we are called into being, or rather we're called into showing as we interact with other people. So the key thing here is to observe for yourself, what is this? What is the truth status? What is the honest truth of the ideas I have about myself? Maybe they're not true. Maybe these are false beliefs. Because when you see that you cannot sum yourself up, when you find that you have so many different aspects, you're actually part of infinity. When you have things, when you have a composite, then you can see that it's built up from bits and pieces. So we have a table here with a top and legs, and these bits are added together in a pattern to make what we call a table. It's put together. You can totalize, you can add up the component parts and see how that comes about. But can you do that with a person? You are beyond arithmetic. You are beyond calculation. That is to say, you are inexpressible. You see this in the text many, many times. Masam Jumi Shera Parochi. You cannot say the truth of things. You cannot express how it is. Because when you have a story, you always have a story about something. I like this person because. There's always a because, and you make a rationale, and you take bits of your experience of them and make a pattern. You're building up a picture. But the person is not your picture of them. Everyone is excessive or in excess of your idea of them. You cannot catch people. You cannot catch butterflies. You cannot catch blackbirds. Because you look at the blackbird and you see the blackbird, and you might like blackbirds, but you don't know what the blackbird is for another blackbird. And you don't know what it is for a magpie, because they sometimes fight. You only have your take. And when you relax out of identification with your own conceptual constructions, the potential of the world is revealed. The potential of other people, but also the potential of yourself. I cannot put myself in a box. To come to a conclusion about myself is to enact a violence against myself. And to come to a conclusion about you, to build up a picture of you, is to hide you as you are from me. So I'm then going to interact with you according to my image of you. I'm going to filter you through my construction of who you are. Which is why we have so much loneliness in the world. Because we like or dislike images we have of the other person. And actually being very connected in an intimate way, not necessarily embodied or sexual, but just actually meeting someone and offering them hospitality is very unusual. Very often we don't give very deep eye contact, we don't offer a space in the heart. Because when we do that, we find that we are transformed as well, and our experience of the other person is transformed. So, I'm not a thing, you're not a thing, and yet we deal with each other as if we were things. So thingness is the real problem. I'm going to start to describe the nature of ignorance now. We'll do some more in the afternoon. This is according to the Nyumapa system. And it's describing the arising of ignorance in a way which can be understood as a linear progression through time, almost like a fairy tale. Once upon a time, long, long ago, something occurred, and due to that, you have the unfolding of the 6 realms of samsara and our wandering inside. Or you can take it as the immediacy of our experience in this moment, that samsara arises moment by moment because the field of experience is always open. The ground, the basis of everything, is always uncovered, unconstrained, but covering arises as well, and on the basis of that covering you have a sense of who you are. So the first thing is the ground, the basis of our existence. This is that the basis of everything is ungraspable. It's described as having 5 qualities. Some of you know these 5 qualities very well. The first is that it's uncompounded, that the ground of our being, the basis of the existence of all sentient beings, is not put together. It's not made by some god, it's not made by anyone. It's just as it is, just as it is. The second quality is that it is self-occurring. in that sense that not only is it not a construct, but nobody has to bring it into being, and it's not that it brings itself into being, it's just an automatic, this is how it is. The third quality is that it's infinite, Plongyang. It's kind of deep and vast. You can't come to the edge of it. There's no limit to it. Thirdly, it's inexpressible. Our language is formulated around things. We can talk about motor cars. You can talk about football teams. As long as there seems to be something, some noun, then you can have adjectives and adverbs and opinions and closer and more distant and so on. But the mind itself, the basis of our existence, is beyond thought, beyond expression. It is mysterious. There is no end to thinking, but you cannot awaken to who you are by thinking. You can learn to make more money by thinking. You can work out how to do your tax return by thinking. There are many, many things that thinking can do. But thinking cannot reveal its own ground, which is the unborn awareness. So this is very, very important for meditators, because our habit is to rely on thought, on conceptual elaboration, more thought and more thought and more thought. But the function of study in Buddhism is deconstructive. If you read Nagarjuna, he's all the time saying, I am not proposing anything. I am deconstructing. He says, neti, neti, not this, not this. Any kind of formulation that you make is deceptive because it's your own construct. When you stay present with the mind itself, everything is there within it. And the fifth quality is that it's beyond identification in terms of samsara, which is limitation, and nirvana, which is release. That is to say, it's beyond thought. It is the mother of thought. All thoughts, feelings, sensations, experiences are the display of the qualities of the ground. That is to say, we are the display of the quality of the ground, as are the trees and the flowers and the motor cars. But these expressions of the potential of the ground don't determine the nature of the ground. As we looked before the break, when you look in a mirror, you see the reflection. You get a sense, oh, this is me, or this is the background of the room you're in. That's what the mirror is showing, but that doesn't tell you anything about the mirror. All you know about the mirror is it can show. It can show all sorts of things, different things. This is the same as the ground, which is the same really as the mind itself. The mind itself cannot be seen, cannot be known, because it is the knower. It's not an object of knowledge. My hand is an object of knowledge for me. My glass of water is an object of knowledge for me. My emotions are an object of knowledge for me. So I can tell you about my emotions, I can tell you about sensations in my body, but I can't tell you about my mind, because it's not an apprehendable object. This is the most fundamental point that we're going to cover in this time together, because we are socialized to believe that our mind is something which can be known, either through neurological research, brain research, and so on. There's going to be some true objective knowledge. Or you could learn something about it through introspection, through being aware of your dreams and being aware of slips of the tongue, all sorts of ways in which you can see the funny ways in which you construct identity. And then you can come to know yourself. From the Buddhist point of view, you can never know yourself because A, you don't have a self, and if you had a self, it couldn't be known. The mind itself is not an object. Now this is interesting because we're so structured into thinking of subject and object. I like this flavor of ice cream. I never eat this kind of vegetable. Whatever it would be, we have opinions. We have, firstly, identification of what we take to be there, that it exists. And then we have our attitude towards it, liking and disliking. This is our world. This is what we're used to formulating. But here it's saying, you cannot catch your mind. Your mind is your mother. You are the child of your mind. But you're a strange kind of child. You are an unborn child of the unborn mother. That is to say, we can just focus on today. Since you got up this morning, you have been thousands of people. In your posture of your body, in the experiences you had, whether you're relaxed or confused, whether you're happy to be here or a bit bored, all kinds of experience have been arising. Each of these particular moments was just you, and just you, and just you. And the past was gone, and the future hadn't arrived, but each moment since you woke up, just this, just this, just this. Oh. It seems to be there, and I feel sad. Then you're not sad. But I felt sad. Well, that's a memory. That's what it means by unborn, that there is an appearance which is undeniable, but it's ungraspable. So again, if we take this traditional image of the mirror, in the mirror a reflection arises. It is undeniable. You look in the mirror, you see, oh, that's my face. You recognize it. Something is there. But what is there? Is it a something? What is the somethingness of the reflection? It is appearance. You can see the details of how your face is. But there's nothing there. But there is something there, which is the reflection. But when you try to find the truth or the essence of the solidity, the substantiality of the reflection, you don't find anything. So in all these moments since you woke up and how you are at this very moment, it's this and then it's not this. So our life is like the unfolding of ceaseless reflections, ceaseless dreams, ceaseless rainbows, ceaseless echoes, like the reflection of the full moon on a pond. Something's there and it's not. So every time we make a definite statement about ourselves, it's transiently true, situationally true, and then it's not. Because outer events shift, inner events shift, and this particular shape is gone. So we're living in this infinite kaleidoscope that is turning and turning and turning, and the colored glass, the karmic components of our existence, form pattern and pattern and pattern. On and on and on. We never get to a true self. We never sort it out. We never arrive at some place definite. Oh, it's unfolding. It's unfolding. But I want to go from here to there, because the metaphor that we have grown up with is about progress. Western capitalism, which has completely transformed our cultures, is based on progress. New artificial intelligence, progress. Everything is progressing towards what? Going somewhere. Going somewhere because I don't want to be here, because there is better than here. And if your whole culture is based on that, why would you bother about being here when you have to get there? Thinking about being here when there is better than here is ridiculous. Better to think about there. Now I'm thinking about something, my idea of a future. How to abandon yourself. This culture is exactly dedicated to self-abandonment, but not in a healthy way. We are lost in pursuit of the yet to be. And when you stay in the moment, you find that this is going, and this is going. somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, there's a land that I dreamt of once in a lullaby. No? Whew. New technology is coming in. Now we have Brexit. We'll find our own destiny. This is fantasy, absolute fantasy, because what we have is vanishing. That's why when we do the practice, we're just sitting. We're not trying to achieve something or make something. We're being present with the arising and passing of the revelation of the ground. This is the mind itself showing itself. It shows as me, as you, as the room, as the wind, as the leaves. It shows everything, ceaselessly, ceaselessly, ceaselessly. Unborn and unceasing. Texts say this again and again. Kewa me pagakpame. Nothing has been born, and yet the showing is ceaseless. Nothing to grasp. So what will I do? That's a bad place to begin. Because you started with the assumption that you are this isolated someone. When we sit, the process is flowing. Thoughts of me, thoughts of you, many different things are arising together. If I privilege this nexus of me, then you're over there and I'm in here. But actually, it's all arising together. The whole field arises together. This is the non-duality of self and other, and of appearance and its ground. So we have appearance and emptiness, clarity and emptiness, awareness and emptiness, where emptiness means the ungraspability. Emptiness is like the mirror. You never find the mirror itself, but the mirror shows itself through its appearance. This is our life. Ever changing, ever changing, ever changing. Yeah, but who am I? You are this. Yeah, but what am I? You are this. You're not a thing. This is very painful and difficult for most of us, because we've been brought up to believe in thingness, in solidity, in substantiality, that you are truly someone. Be yourself. Have your own life. Take your own future into your hands. Be who you need to be. Assert yourself. Meaningless junk. These kind of statements drive people crazy. Who will I be? How will I be myself? When people are really being themselves, like the buffoon Mr. Trump, you see, oh, that's what happens when somebody is being themselves. He needs somebody to tap him on the shoulder and say, oi, other people exist, not just you. He is in a bubble of self-intoxication. And our own baby Boris is going in the same direction. He would like to do that. It's very, very tempting to think, I am the limit of the world. And luckily, we are ordinary people, so we get interrupted more frequently. I'm here with you. I'm here with you. You're here with me. We are interacting. We are being together. We co-create this event. It's not just me talking, because I'm talking because you're here. My speaking and your being available is the field. It's not done by me to you, by me for you. It is because of you that I am like this. And this is our life, moment by moment, co-emergent, object and subject moving in these infinite patterns, with both object and subject as the display of the unborn ground. So compassion is when we see that everyone wandering around in this isolated cocoon of themselves is actually the radiance of the Buddha's mind. Everything is the Buddha. But we think, yeah, but life is difficult, and I have regrets, and if I had my time over again, I'd do it differently, and so on. What is that? A cocoon of ideas, of thoughts, of memories. And the moment is fresh. The moment's always fresh. But you're not in this moment because you believe that ideas tell the truth. And ideas don't tell the truth. Ideas hide the truth, although they are the display of the truth. So when you experience your thoughts, feelings, and sensations emerging in the moment as the display of the unborn ground, it's fresh, just this, just this. But when you have a thought and it seems to tell you about who you really are, it becomes an isolating factor. It separates you from the field of disclosure. So that's why thoughts are not the enemy. Feelings, sensations, memory, it's not the enemy. There are no enemies except ignorance. And ignorance means ignoring or not being aware of how it is. Because we live with two facets. We have presence, which is just this, and imagining. And if imagination is integrated as part of the field of emergence, then you can create and do whatever you like, because it is the theatre of the mind. But when you start to imagine truly existing people, truly existing countries, hierarchies of values of different countries, then you have the basis for invasion and war, because you have invented the idea of racial superiority, religious superiority, and so on. Entitlement. So this is very, very important to see. You can imagine heaven, you can imagine hell. Our own William Blake was very clear about that. This is the imagination. And if you see that your imagination is the play of the ground and that everything is illusion, then there is no imprisonment. But when imagination is cut off from its ground, I believe this is how it should be, then the ego steals the imagination and takes it to be its mode of manifestation. We have this big shift that occurred in Western art with the early Renaissance, where artists became the creators. Before that, there were people who worked painting and making sculptures and so on. They had a gift, and the gift was God's gift to them, and they manifested particular phenomena. But once you started to have the cult of the special person and their amazing gifts, and so everybody learns the name of these early painters and so on, but the time you've got to Michelangelo and Leonardo, you have the cult of the genius, the special person, who out of themselves do these wonderful things. Where does it come from? Where does it come from? You can imagine. There's Michelangelo. He's got this huge big block of Carrara marble. And he feels something, and he starts chipping away, and he's revealing what is inside this block of stone. Such an amazing thing to do, because he's in relation to the stone. He's got an unimpeded confidence in that he can feel the quality of the stone. Where does that come from? Where does the little Michelangelo inside the body of Michelangelo? Something is arising. This, from a Buddhist point of view, this is the Dharmakaya speaking, and it expresses itself as Michelangelo, as Leonardo, as all of us. We are the forms of this expression. The ground of us is unborn. This is emptiness speaking, emptiness sculpting, emptiness molding clay, emptiness cooking. Nobody's doing it. But once you take on the isolated subject, what an amazing person. Really fantastic. Who was Michelangelo? Something breathing in and out, walking, talking, shitting, pissing, engaging and engaging and engaging. Michelangelo means movement. Leonardo is movement. Van Gogh is movement. A ceaseless unfolding due to causes and circumstances. Where is the essence? What you have is the expression. Then people see the expression, the painting, or whatever, and say, this is amazing. Now, if we go to an exhibition of Van Gogh as a preparation We turn to each other and we take out our knife and we blind each other. So we go in as a group of blind people to look at Van Gogh. Is this going to be helpful? Oh, that means that our eyes and the painting of Van Gogh have a relationship. Van Gogh is revealed to me through me. There is no such thing as amazing Van Gogh all on his own. It's Van Gogh plus the National Gallery, plus wherever the exhibition is, plus you being there in the mood, and you get your Van Gogh. You don't get anyone else's Van Gogh. You get your Van Gogh, your Michelangelo. There is no such thing as this sculpture or this painting. It is part of the revelation, the co-emergence, the unfolding together. So this is quite difficult to think about, because we're used to thinking in terms of duality. There's me in here and all you guys out there. But actually, functionally, it arises together. And you get your life. What you can hear, what you can taste, smell, touch, whatever thoughts arise for you. You are the center of the world, of your world. And our worlds are all crisscrossing and interconnecting. But the idea of fixed people out there, some superior, some inferior, is terrible. Because if you want to have saints, you have to have sinners. If you're going to have Michelangelo, you're going to have the gulags as well. You're going to have the torture camps as well. If you've got the great ones, you're going to have the inferior ones. What we have is the multifarious display of the energy of the ground. So now we have a break for lunch. You have a chance to interact, you can go for a walk, and as experiences arising, if you find yourself going into an interpretive loop or reflections of somewhere else, relax in the out-breath and just try to allow life to flow into you and you to flow into life. And various sensations, emotions arise and fall. Don't interrupt it. However it is, this is how it is. And it's passing through and it's passing through. And the more you let it pass through, the less trace it leaves. And the less trace there is from that moment, it means this moment's fresh and this moment's fresh. When you start accumulating experience and building up a picture, that's when you get burdened. That's what obscuration is. When we read about that in Dharma text, obscurations, it means the accumulation of layers of traces of the past. And it's gone. And it's gone. So whatever you're doing, this and gone, this and this and this. And each this can be very fresh. Clock time. Okay. One thing follows another. But when you get caught up in a thought, when you go off into a little loop, that's a different kind of time. It's like when you were a kid and you found out how to read and you really get into a book and there's a kind of timelessness in it and your mum's coming in and saying, put the light out, because you got lost in the book and there's no real beginning or end and you don't quite even know where you are. And so in the meditation you can see when you fuse into the experience, there's a dislocation. You're not in this location, this embodied location, and you're not really in this time either. And then you come out of it and something else is going on. So that second absorbed sense of time we want to avoid, and we want to have more of the first time when we're actually able to see the flow of experience. So there's more stability in the subject, being with what is arising and passing, but without being pulled into it. And there's a third form of time in which we are the source of the arising, and we'll come to look at that more later. But it's quite helpful to see how time shifts in various ways. We know that sad time is different from happy time, and lonely time is different from time with friends. So the key thing there is to recognize the non-fixity of our lived experience. when we think about experience or talk about experience, it tends to oversimplify it. But actually, there are many vectors occurring all at once. So on an outer level, we're here in this hall. This is a hall linked to a Christian church. The usage has clearly changed over the years. It has arisen due to certain beliefs. People have collected donations, and there have been big sponsors, and they've created this building. And it's been refurbished, and we can see that the roof is already leaking a little bit. Winds come, the tiles are old and loose, the rain gets pushed up and it comes down. Whatever you try to maintain is vulnerable to these changes. So buildings like this are very useful for us, and we can see again and again the effort that goes into making things, but we see it very briefly because we're just here. This is just this. So that's a relationship to time, isn't it? So we have an event. I've come here to be with you. And this hasn't fallen out of the sky. People have been involved in the organization. There have been meetings. People have taken on tasks. They've manifested these tasks, being on the door, getting the milk, and so on. Many, many efforts and engagements go into the arising of this occasion. But when we're here, it's just this. And so being just here, being in it, is very nice, but it's kind of stupid. Because we take it for granted. It's as if it's just fallen out of the sky. And when you actually look at it, this arises due to many people's efforts. I mean, everyone's effort to get here and to be here. Some people setting out the chairs and so on. There are many, many modes of participation. So this is a construct. And by being here, we are constructing this event. It's not self-existing. But somehow we could just be in it for a while, and then we end in the evening, and then tomorrow morning we've got a bit, and then it's over. And so we're in these kind of containments which seem to have no beginning and no end. We're just in it. And then gone. And then I'll be on a train. I'll be in the train. I'll be out of the train. And when you're perceiving the world in that way, what becomes hidden is the actual processes of cause and effect. That this event arises due to effort, and effort is energy, and the energy is streamed into this because of people's thought constructions and beliefs and desires that something happens. So this is dynamic. The being here together is a participative being here. There's no stasis in it at all. There's no thingness in it at all. And even this room itself is changing as we experience it. As we've looked, I think, on many different occasions, the concept of this room seems to be stable and continuous, but the lived perception of the room is different. Each of us is in a different room, perceptually, depending on where you're sitting, your height, whether there's someone in front of you or not, the vantage point. The room as potential is revealed to you in the unique specificity of your location. But we don't see that. We inhabit the idea of the room. I'm here in the room. I can't see what's behind me. I imagine there's a wall. Maybe there isn't. But I imagine the room. So that relates to what we looked at before lunch. Direct perception and imagination. And when you lose touch with direct perception, which is shifting and turning moment by moment, as you breathe in, as you breathe out, that affects your hearing, it affects how you see, pulsating all the time. But we're in the room, we're in the room. And so this givenness of situations, the kind of conclusion that you can have, which is quite reassuring, because we're just here. Actually, that's false. That's a kind of displacement out of time. We were here in the morning, but this is a different room now. Our mood is different. We feel a bit different. The window's open, it's a bit more chilly. So the flavor of being in the room shifts. Yeah, but it's the same room. And it's on that point you can investigate for yourself. Is that a wise thing to say? Yeah, but it's the same room. Come on, it feels a wee bit different, but basically, it's the same room. Or are you making yourself stupid? Because actually, it feels different. So, if it feels different, and because of the the bright sunshine that was there just before lunch, that's faded. The angle of the sun is going down. The power of the electric light in the room seems to be increased, relatively speaking. The actual room as revealed is shifting. The revelation of the room is dynamic. Our concept of the room is static. So if you stay with experience, it's always fresh. It's always unfolding. But if you hold on to the concept and make that the anchor of your experience, then you can accumulate all sorts of ideas on the basis of, here we are again, same old room. So you can observe that for yourself. Same old me. Feel a wee bit different. Not so good this afternoon, but anyway, that's me. That's me. So in these moments, we become stupid because we're saying there is an inherent existence to myself. I feel different, I look different, but I'm still me. So this me-ness of me is an imputation. It's something which we project into the situation because we don't want to stay with the ungraspability of the moment as it shows itself. The problem with this, in getting that reassurance, we become encumbered by the burden of a fixed world to be maintained. So, this hall, when it was repainted, it's all very fresh, and now it's starting to get a little bit run down. Now, should the room be clean and tidy or not? Personally, I would say we should always have rubbish everywhere because the world is full of rubbish and dirt is normal and people nowadays wash too much. In Tibet, there wasn't such an obsession with washing. But here, people wash and they want it to be tidy. So now, this change in the ceiling is terrible. Something's gone wrong. Rather than, that's life. The mark on the ceiling is like the wrinkles on your face. It's life. So our bodies change with age. And this is how it is. And this is how it is. But when you start from an idea that it should be perfect, then instead of staying with the connectivity, with the lived qualities of existence, you go for some abstraction. So this is at the heart of it, that when we're in any situation, if we open, we will feel the causal flow running through it. Because as you look around the room, you see that the floor has been very well fitted, and there's been care being done, and there's some endless brushstrokes and brushstrokes as people bring out the details of the paintwork on the cast iron. It takes a lot of time to paint that nicely. In the same with the organization of this event, people have gone to trouble. And the more you see details, the more you have gratitude. Because this has arisen through particular participation. And the more you go with the abstraction, it just is, you cut it into something self-existing, and so you don't need to feel any gratitude. It just is. Our lives are not like that. Our lives are dependent on our interactions with others. We come into being through being with others. And so in this way we can see that the emptiness of ourselves, the absence of a fixed inherent identity, is the basis of our responsiveness. The fact that every situation is manifesting due to participation means we can be present ourselves and have gratitude for others. And it's the gratitude that means we see other people more. We see them and we thank them, and that allows them to become more visible for us. And the visibility of the other is love. That's really what it is. When you see something, when you see a mum looking at a little baby, you see in the quality of the gaze an absolute commitment to protect and nurture, because this is valuable. The baby doesn't really have very much value in itself. It just shits and keeps you awake. But it has value for the person with the eyes of love. So it's the gaze that reveals the potential, because otherwise if you think, well, babies, what do? Unproductive labour. I'm the one that's labouring and got to wipe their bum all the time. They're not doing anything. So come the revolution, get rid of them. But we don't get rid of people if we see them, because we appreciate them. And this is the whole thing about being transparent in our lives, allowing ourselves to be seen as we are, and committing ourselves to seeing other people as they are, with an inclusive eye. The inclusive eye means I see you warts and all. I see you with your virtues, I see you with your flaws. This is part of the picture, part of the topology, the profile, so that rather than fixating on someone being wonderful, which they probably are from time to time, or somebody being horrible, which they probably are from time to time, we try to hold both together. Because it's this inclusion which is the actuality of our existence. That one minute we're being quite generous, another moment we're being a bit selfish. We pulsate in these different ways. So again, we come back to this point. When you gain definite knowledge about yourself or someone else, you've enacted a violence to the process. You've frozen the flow of the actuality of the presentation of the person into an image. And this image is imagined. So the sensory directness of what we encounter is being made obscured by the opacity of our belief in our own imaging or imagination. Does that make sense? So again and again, we have to clear the doors of perception. And we do this when we do the sitting practice. We're just sitting, and all these thoughts and feelings and sensations arise. And if you merge into them, there seems to be a flavour of clarity, because you're thinking about something and it's quite interesting. And then it's gone, and then it's gone. And the more you do the practice, you start to see, oh, this thought, which seems to be a vehicle of illumination, that's telling me something useful, is actually obscuring. Because the truth of the thought is, it comes and it goes, it comes and it goes. The energetic truth of a sensation is, it comes and it goes, it comes and it goes. But we are concerned primarily with the semantic meaning, with the conceptual meaning of the thought or the feeling. The fact that the thought has already begun its vanishing journey, but we try to hang on to its meaning. We're grasping at there being something there. And so we build thought and thought and thought. So the practice, simple as it is an opportunity just to allow the passing and allow the passing. And then we start to see, I'm still here, I'm still here, I'm still here, and I don't need this thought in order to be here. However, I need this thought in order to be me. So as presence, as awareness, thoughts come and go. They don't add value and they don't remove value. But in terms of my sense of who I am and my particularities and my likes and dislikes, then the thoughts are incredibly useful, because these are the ingredients of the construction of my ego self. Does that make sense? So, On the level of the reflections, when you look in the mirror and you're looking at something in your face and you think, oh, something in my eye, the particularities of the reflection are the important thing. But if you're seeing, oh, this is a reflection, this is empty, this is an empty showing, and then you think, oh, maybe this side is also an empty showing. When I look in the reflection, I see the reflection of this one, but who is this one? This is a reflection of the mind. The mind shows a reflection, which I take to be this, and then the mirror shows another reflection of this. Reflection after reflections. This is a ceaseless hall of mirrors, endlessly reflected. In some of the Mahayana sutras, it writes of this as Indra's net, imagining this great Hindu god Indra creates a net of diamond-like crystals that cover the whole universe, and each one has many facets, and each facet reflects all the other jewels. So you get endless pulsations of reflection. And this is what our world is. It's display. It's a showing without substance. Now, I'm repeating this in various ways again and again because it's quite difficult for us to imagine that this could be true. Okay, so we sit again a little bit. And the reason that we don't do this kind of practice for a long period of time is because it's not a process of making effort. We're just sitting, we're relaxing into it, this is happening. At first you find after a while your mind gets bound into various thought creations and so on. So then it's better to stop and not continue that, because otherwise, like a fly in a spider's web, you're struggling to get out, and the more you struggle, the more you get caught up in the sticky texture. So usually we sit for 5 minutes, even less, but do it frequently. So you're relaxing out of the seemingly ceaseless flow of experience, which you're immersed in and identified with, to just having a bit more space, and everything's now streaming through and streaming through. So, going back to what we looked at in the morning, the ground or the basis is the emptiness of all phenomena. There are various ways of approaching emptiness. When you look at it from the Mahayana point of view, it's a further stage of the deconstruction of the idea of inherent existence. So first of all, you have people, but then you see people are composed or constituted out of these 5 skandhas we briefly looked at. When these 5 operate together, you have a person. When your various organs are operating together, you have a living body. This is not a thing, but it's a way of unfolding. Then we look further and we see that what appear to be these core ingredients, the basic ingredients of existence, the dharmas or phenomena, they themselves are also devoid of inherent self-nature. No phenomena, no thing that you can experience is self-existing. Everything arises independent origination. On the basis of this, that arises. Nothing is there just by itself. So when we see this in our mind, we see, oh, my mood is shifted by what I encounter. For meditators, the meaning of dependent co-origination is don't try to control your mind. What you call your mind is the stream of experience that you take to be yourself. Because you don't live on an island, because you're with other people, because different people impact you in different ways, how you manifest and formulate is shifting. you are not a stable entity. So you imagine if you're by the sea and there's rocks and the tide's coming in, and maybe there's some seaweed around the rocks. The water surges in, but as it hits the rocks, it gets turned in different ways. You've got lots of cross currents of water, and the seaweed's rising and falling, and then the waves are being sucked out again and they come in. This is our life, like that. Coming from different angles, different intensities, rising and falling. This is certainly my life, and maybe you guys are all sorted. I'm moving all the time. The movement arises with the other, with the situation. I am part of. That is to say, the field of experience has the same ground. Everything arises from emptiness. So when we're critiquing the stability of phenomena, we show, oh, they have no essence inside them. Everything is empty. But now we see emptiness is actually the basis of everything. Now we have to be very clear here. When you say emptiness, everything comes from emptiness. It doesn't mean that this is some higher order metaphysical super substance. It doesn't mean that emptiness is a thing. If you turn emptiness into a thing, you have no Dharma path at all. You've gone mad. So we say, the basis of everything, the kunji, is dumache, is uncompounded. The basis of everything is ungraspable. So when you really see this, your own mind, when you look for your mind, you can't find anything. The mind has no color or shape. It's not big or small. It doesn't come from anywhere. It doesn't stay anywhere. It doesn't go anywhere. And yet we're here. You can't find your mind. What you find is the content of the mind, which is shifting moment by moment. Independent origination. So the basic openness or emptiness of the mind, this is called, in the Dzogchen tradition, is called kada, primordial purity. There is nothing to be cleaned. There is nothing to be cleared away. The mirror is always clean because it's empty. You can have some horrible image reflected in the mirror, but the mirror is not contaminated. If we had a murder in here and there was blood all over the floor, after the police have done their business, then you get cleaners who come in to try to take away the blood stains and so on. Mirrors don't need that. You could cut someone's throat in front of the mirror. You want to make a horror movie? Blood, gore, blood. But you didn't need to clean the mirror. The mirror's clean. The mirror's clean. So this is the meaning of primordial purity. When you don't identify with what is arising in the mind, you start to see the mind is not affected. The involvement is where the turbulence or the trouble begins. Awareness doesn't get involved. Ego consciousness gets involved. So we're going to look at this in a minute, how ignorance arises. And the second aspect is this primordial purity, this unchanged purity from the very beginning, the absolute reliability of the openness of the mind itself, our mind, is inseparable from the effortlessly arising display of experience, what's called hlundru. Hlunba means like a hill or some lump which arises, and drup means made. So it's all done at once. Woof, just like that, just like that. So this is our life. Moment by moment, we look this way, oh, we look that way, oh, you go outside in the road, oh. Everything is arising fully completed, moment by moment. It's not built up picture by picture. It's not pixelated. It's just this. It's just this. Then, of course, you have selectivity inside this field of experience. Some things take your attention, other things you don't want to look at, and you build up your selective impression of what you see. But the whole shebang, everything is available all at once. So, Primordial purity and effortlessly arising are inseparable. This is not very different from unborn and unceasing, the more general Mahayana statement. This is how it is. This is how it is. This is all there is. And inside this field of effortless emergence, here we are. We're just moving this way and that. Just like seaweed, moving this way. No? You think, oh, I'll make a cup of tea. Why? Oh, I don't know, I just thought I would make a cup of tea. Did you make the thought before you made the cup of tea? No, the thought came to me. Who sent you the thought? I don't know. I just wanted a cup of tea. I made the cup of tea and now I've had my cup of tea. It came to you. It came to you. You're not the maker. You participate in this flow. Something comes to you, you respond. Receive, respond. Receive, respond. It's just like the pulse in the heart. Boom, 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 boom. Like the breath going in and out. Receive, respond. The less you think about it, the less you judge, the less you analyze, the more easy this pulsation of receive and respond comes. Then it's easier to be with people. Because you just receive something and you respond, as is possible in that moment. There's no right way to do it. There's no wrong way to do it. It's just like this. It's just like this. Afterwards you think, oh, maybe I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't very good. What is that thought referring to? To the memory. What happened has been transformed in order to become a memory, and now you're having an anxious thought on the basis of thinking about the memory, and the memory is not what occurred, and the event is gone. How to fuck yourself up? That's why they say in the text, don't get into regret. If you think something's wrong, if you're on an outer level, do purification practice, do confessions, do something like that. But don't take it seriously, because then you build up a picture, oh, I'm a terrible person, they won't like me, it's going to be so difficult the next time I see them. Now between you and the person, this wall is building up, and they are completely oblivious of it. So next time you see them, you're being a bit wary because you're expecting them to be critical of you, and they're thinking, oh, a bit strange today. And that's how we have miscommunication a lot of the time. So it's not about being self-indulgent, but if you are connected with the field and you see people and you feel the energy of how they are, you're likely to be able to locate yourself in relation to them in quite a healthy way, neither invading nor abandoning, because these are the two crimes that break the heart. When children are having a hard time, these are the two things which are operating. Invasion, could be sexual, could be through violence, it could be through cruel words, they're being penetrated by stuff they don't need, or they're being abandoned, they're not being attended to, there's no one playing with them, there's no one interested in how their day has been. So this is the same for us. Not invading, not abandoning, but staying on the middle way, on the midpoint, with the pulsation of the world, going forward and going back. And if your pulsation can harmonize with someone else's pulsation, then you start to have a synergy, a collaborative energy which is productive for both people. So this is the idea of the Bodhisattva. Bodhisattva finds a way to manifest as required. So they say, well, they will manifest as a bridge if someone needs to cross a river, as a tree if someone needs shade in the desert. They will manifest for the other. So this is what we've already looked at. The more you see that the ground of who you are is not your egoic identity, but is this open potential which is arising freely in different ways, moment by moment, you become for the other. You become for the other. rather than for yourself. Which means don't over-prepare. One of the big issues, for example, in psychotherapy is that trainees have to have a lot of supervision and they have to think about how they're going to be. And thinking about how you're going to be is a training in violence. You don't know how you're going to be. You don't know how the patient's going to be. The best training for being with other people is dance movement improvisation, where you don't know what's going to happen and you learn to move in the moment with the field, as part of the field. As soon as you have an agenda and you want to use your agenda, because it's a very good agenda, you're going to impose your agenda on the other person. And if you can stay with the people who are dancing or moving together, your positioning will arise in the field of movement. And you won't be the lonely dancer. You won't be self-conscious because the group is dancing, the field is dancing, and you're freed to be part of the field. But when you become self-conscious and you think, why are they looking at me? What's going on? Then you know what it's like. You get rigid, you can't think, you don't want to be there, you become embarrassed, your breathing changes and so on. So the open, empty ground is always there and everything is emerging from that ground. This room is emerging from that ground. We are the radiance of the ground, or in tantric language, we are the Nirmanakaya in this field of the Sambhogakaya, emerging as with the base of the Dharmakaya. Dharmakaya is the mind of the Buddha, the awareness which reveals everything. It's the basic clarity of the mind. Within that, showing now is people's shapes, bodies, movements, and within that, we are moving. We are within. We're not outside observers. We're not the audience. We are participants and we are already on the inside. And this is so important. Wherever you go, you're on the inside. You're never a stranger. So you can start to see how that links with the idea all sentient beings have been our mother in a previous life. There are no strangers. You're always in it. We're always in it. We're already in it. But when we become anxious as an ego, we're out of it. We're in this private little world. And then we think, well, what should I do? And then try to work out, how should I be? And you've already made it impossible by formulating it as a should, that there is a right way to do it and a wrong way. How will I know the right way? Well, you can't know because there isn't a right way. That's not what you get taught at school. That's not what parents teach their children. They say you should do this and you should do that and you should do that. And if you do these things, life will be good. This is a lie. Being a good child and cleaning your teeth and washing your hands doesn't stop you getting leukemia. All kind of things happen to children. All kind of diseases and accidents and horrors. And clean teeth doesn't help them. So we bullshit people, constantly telling them there is a master plan. And if you take your place and follow the rules, life will be okay. This is nonsense. We have to see this is a shifting field. And if you want to be safe, you've got to be here. You cannot assume that knowledge from the past will keep you safe now. When you walk down the street, you have to get the feeling, what is Macclesfield? If you're out in the street, Macclesfield's not London. Where I live in London's a bit rough. So you've got to really keep your eyes open. This is a softer place. It's easier. Some places have high crime levels, some places don't. So according to that feeling tone, you position yourself. This is how we live. This is how we stay safe. There's no plan to do that. You have to feel it. And in order to feel it, you have to receive it. And in order to receive it, you can't be preoccupied. So that's how meditation has a very practical fulfillment. That by being more present, you're safer in the world and more available to be with other people as they are. Okay, so let's have another little sip. So, I would invite you now that we sit again, and this time you raise your gaze a little bit so you've got more sense of the space in the room. You just stay relaxed and open with the sense of the space. And then after a couple of minutes, you bring your gaze down to look at something specific, maybe somebody's shoulder or the side of their face, and you have a sense of that, and then raise your gaze to the space of the room, and then bring it onto a specific form, okay? And do that several times so that you get a sense of the difference. So, what sort of experiences did you encounter? What did you notice?
It's like looking at the detail and then looking at the bigger picture.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of zooming in and then zooming out.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of an oscillation between the two.
Okay.
That I found more interesting for me the zooming out.
Mm-hmm.
Because it shifted. The zooming in felt a bit boring. Well,
Mm-hmm.
it was fine.
Mm-hmm.
It was clearer. It was more visually. It was clearer.
Mm-hmm.
But the other one allowed me to have more movement.
Okay. And did they appear to be slightly oppositional or contradictory?
I think he said it was interesting. It was like foregrounding or backgrounding.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't not necessarily contradictory, but just different, or of a different state. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Any other?
No, I felt it much more grounded under this one.
Uh-huh.
Like I was very aware of groundedness, whereas with this one I thought aware of just spaciousness, limitlessness actually, and
Okay.
it felt like light. Of course, it is light.
Mm-hmm.
They did feel very different.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Continuum between the two, but they also can be a bit in opposition. So, when we have a sense of the space, and then we have a sense of the phenomena and space, when we fixate on the phenomena, it can appear that there is an opposition between the phenomena and the space. As if phenomena are displacing space the way your body displaces water when you get in the bath. That this shaping stands in opposition. So that's often what it feels like. That you lose the spaciousness when you fixate on the entity. So if we go back to the Heart Sutra, which I guess most of you will know reasonably well, the basic point in the Heart Sutra is that when you see a form is there, but its essence or its truth is emptiness. There is no internal existence holding that form in place. The form is held in place by the juxtaposition of the causal factors. So the glass in my hand clearly is a glass, it exists, but if I drop it and it smashes, it won't be. So the glassness of the glass is also in a conversation with my hand. And if I'm careless, the glassness of the glass will be exposed as the fruit of the balancing of these forces. And if these forces shift, then the glass is no more. So the seeming self-existence of the glass is an illusion. So if we stay with form is emptiness, emptiness is form, then there is no opposition between emptiness and form. This is referred to as non-duality. It's not that you have two things. On the one hand this, and on the other hand that. And you can't merge the two into one. They are back to back. They are mutually exclusive. This is the law of exclusion which dominates our conceptual interpretation. I am a man, How are you a man? I'm a man because I'm not a woman. So what does it mean to be a man? Well, basically it means not to be a woman. Because it's quite difficult to say what it means to be a man, but I'm not a woman. There you go. So the law of exclusion is a simplification for how to establish the seeming separate truth or existence of phenomena. You know, if something's hot, it's not cold. If something's heavy, it's not light. If it's winter, it's not summer. We live in a world of polarities. That's how we organize our experience. And this is why the Heart Sutra is so completely radical, because it takes these binary opposition, form and emptiness. Well, form is fucking something. It's there. Come on. It's form. And it's empty. It's empty simultaneously. In the moment of the form, there is the emptiness. In the moment of the emptiness, there is the form. They're not two things. They are non-dual. You cannot separate them. But you can't say they're just one, because the form is form and emptiness. Emptiness is emptiness and form. So sound and emptiness. You hear silence, and then there's a sound, and the sound is in the silence. We tend to think that silence is destroyed by sound, but the silence is the facilitative vehicle within which sound is occurring. So in that sense, when we have a sense of the space, there's an openness, and then you're more aware of a phenomena. And it gives you, I think as you were indicating, something, you were saying like more grounding, so something more, your mind can settle on this, because now I see heads or seats or someone's shoulder. Something is there. Whereas when you're letting your gaze rest in the space, there's nothing. There's just space. Of course you can see something in the distance, but if you don't focus on the horizon, if you keep your attention in the space, it's ungraspable. And then you look down and think, oh, something. Now this is very important in terms of the understanding of how ignorance arises. Because there are 4 aspects in the Nyingmapa tradition to the arise of ignorance. The first is the ignorance of the thing itself. It's very difficult to translate the term. It's datni. It means the dat means self or entity. And nid means the ness of it, entityness. So it's the ignorance of perceiving something. Something is there. So if you imagine you're out by a pond, and your pond is very still, and suddenly it starts to rain a little bit, and drops of water come on the surface of the pond, and you see the ripples spreading out from the drop. You see ripples. That's what we do. What is a ripple? Water. What is the pond? Water. We see water watering, but we see a ripple. And in the moment that you see the ripple, there seems to be a something which has come into existence which is other than the water. Because now your mind can apprehend, oh, look at the ripples. Look at these circles. Look, it's amazing. Oh, something is happening. The water is showing another form. Nothing has been born, but when you say it's a ripple, you give birth to it. Your concepts are the midwives of samsara. You bring out the babies of the thingness of the world by how you conceptualize them. If you didn't take on that midwife function, the concepts would remain within the womb of the Great Mother. They would remain within emptiness. The ripple is not different from the water. When you go to the ocean and you see the waves, oh, look at the waves. Oh, that one's so big. That one what? That wave. And it's already vanishing, and it was only the sea. There was no wave. The wave never came out of the ocean. It's like you, by saying, look at the wave, you are the midwife. You're tearing this baby out from the mother. But the baby remains in the mother, never separated. But you apprehended it. The wave is different from the water. So this is the first level of ignorance. The wave arises and vanishes. It was never born. But when you apprehend it, you create for yourself the thing to get hold of. There was nothing to get hold of out there. But by naming, you grab the name. You put the name, you grab the name. Now you're holding on to the name you have projected onto the moment, which has already gone. It's already vanished. So this is the beginning of samsara, because you are ignoring the fact that the ripple or the wave is the water. You have made two when there is one. Or rather, there's non-duality. There is a wave, that's a fact, but the wave is not different from, not other than the water. Yeah? But you grab one and you make it separated out. So the second level of ignorance is called the co-emergent ignorance, in which the formation that is starting to seem like something different, something apart, is still there with its ground, with its openness, and it could tilt either way. So there's a kind of hesitancy or an anxiety in this. Is it something, or is it just open? Is it just space showing itself? Like sometimes in summer you get these very light, wispy clouds in the sky, and they seem to come out of the sky and then vanish. You see them especially if you go up in a plane, and just on the edge of the clouds you see the little wispy bits, and they seem to extend out and then they just dissolve. They appear and they disappear. So it's like this. Here is something and it's dissolving. So it's form and non-form. Form and non-form. And the non-formness, if you hold it together, deconstructs the form. It is as if there was something there. It is as if. But it's gone. But if you move into your imagination and you apprehend it, oh, look at that. Something's there. And it's your own mental activity which is injecting somethingness into the transient phenomena that's already vanishing. The wave in the ocean is already vanishing. It's vanishing. It's just going. But it was. So at this level of ignorance or unawareness or ignoring, the open ground of everything, which is the spaciousness within which appearances occur, can be the focus of your attention, open, or your attention can be hooked. Not you. When I say your attention, there's nobody there yet. It's just it's a movement of the mind itself. Never mind any people. We'll come to that in a minute. It's just a movement of attention locking on to something. But the attention itself is another wave. The apprehending is a wave. And so you have multiple waves, wave after wave after wave after wave. And it's going on. So now there's a lot of turbulence. There's a lot of stuff. Which takes you to the third level of ignorance, which is where you have the naming of everything. This is the ignoring of the ground by the attribution of names and qualities to all phenomena. So we put the noun, and then we put the adverb and the adjective. So you look around the room, you see things. This is obvious. We see things, there are things. We live in a nominative world. Nouns, things, entities. We can put a name onto everything in this room. We could take each person in the room and describe them, and then we would add our adjectives and adverbs to bring that out. This is a person, their face looks sad, their face looks happy, their face looks curious. We would be identifying qualities, and we would think these qualities pertain to that person. Of course, when we ask someone else, what's your opinion? They'll say, oh, I don't see it that way. But for me, that's what you are, because that's how I see you. And how I see you, I have to believe, is how you are. So I believe in my projected identification of you. I construct you and I believe in you and you're mine. Who you are for you, bugger. But I know who you are for me. So in that way, the more you know, the more isolated you become. Does that make sense? Because you now have a mind of your own, with your own mental content, your memories, your hopes, your fears. And these are like being a kid, and gradually now you're, 18 months, and you become aware that you have toys, and that's mine, and you won't let anyone else play with it. And as you get older, and Christmas comes and birthday comes, you get more toys, and my toys. And you see the world in terms of your toys. So this third level of ignorance is very interesting, because if you think of birds, I'm constantly amazed at seeing a bird fly very quickly into a tree and then it just settles. I think, how the fuck do you do that? Sometimes I run around in a field, but it's amazing, they're lightning and then suddenly they stop. They don't even sugar. How do they do it? So it must be, to be a bird is something I cannot imagine. But for them, it's absolutely clear. And mice do what mice do. And cockroaches do what cockroaches do. So inside each form of human existence, there is a construal system which is harmonious with their body properties. They are both inhabiting that potential and formulating that potential simultaneously. Does that make sense? That as you were a kid, you were learning to be a human being, and you were already a human being. But you learned to become a human being, or you learned to release and manifest the potential that you had by being born in a human body. And it feels real, because your interpretive matrix seems to have a direct lock-on to what is there. And on this level, we have all the problematics of language, because we think that this is a glass. Now, it's only called a glass in English. It's not called a glass in French or in most other languages. They have their own words for it. So we see that glass is a conventional term, but if you're British and you don't know other languages very well, a glass is a glass is a glass. It just is a glass. So if you only speak one language, it's very easy to make a one-to-one correlation between the name and the entity. When you speak more languages, you move around, but it becomes seamless for people who are very fluent in different languages. It is this word, and then it's that word, and it's that word, and the differences between the words don't seem to create that, hang on a minute, how can this be all these names? Because in the moment that you speak that language, this is held inside that language game. Does that make sense? This is fascinating. So we're so good at projecting the meaning into the item that we take it to be embedded in it, even when we're offering alternative projections. So that's a very quick fusion. Language doesn't touch the world. Language touches our image of the world, our idea about the world. The mind talks to the mind, language talks to language, and phenomena are left alone. It's only when your mind is very silent that you really come into the world of phenomena. Because usually we're running a narrative in our head, a conversation, an internal one, a commentary, which is interpretive, which is pulling the phenomena into my world. So that's what this fourth level of ignorance means. that the phenomena is the showing of the ground. It's the freshness, the immediacy of what's there, which is inseparable from emptiness. But you can't do anything with that. You can't buy it, you can't sell it, you can't wrap it and give it to someone. It's this, but unworkable in the frame of reference of a human being. If you want to be as a human being, you have to talk about appearance as if it's the appearance of something. The appearance of something means there is an essence behind the appearance. So if we go back to the Heart Sutra, form is emptiness, emptiness is form. The essence behind the form or the appearance is emptiness. Oh, bugger me, that's not possible. Behind the appearance of the glass, there is glassness. There is me-ness. There is you-ness. No. This is delusion. This is a false imputation. You see people in the room. What you see is appearance. You can talk with appearances. You can dance with appearances. You can kiss appearances. You can have all kind of engagements with appearances. It doesn't create a truly self-existing person. We are unfolding, revealing appearances, the appearances of emptiness. Emptiness isn't the enemy. Without emptiness, you would just be in a little box. You would have no life. All the things that have happened in your life have been due to emptiness. Otherwise, you'd just be one thing. But you can hop. You probably haven't hopped for a while. When you were a child, you probably enjoyed hopping. Hop on one leg, hop on the other. You can do skipping, you can do climbing, you can climb trees. Little bodies do endless numbers of things. And you say, Mom, look at me, look what I can do. Mom's saying, no, okay, that's good. Yeah, well, wonderful, you. But we should celebrate that in children. Because what they're exploring is, I can do this and I can do that. And one of the favourite things, certainly when I was a kid, was games where you got to say, ha ha, you can't catch me. That is vital. You can't catch me. Nobody has ever caught us. You can catch people. You can imprison them, you can tattoo them, you can manacle them, you can bully people, you can be in an abusive relationship with a very controlling person, and then it is as if you are caught. But actually, nobody has caught you. People catch things about you. You might be with somebody who insults you on a daily basis and tells you you're ugly and that no one else would ever want you and so on. There are many bastards who treat people in that way and crush them so that they implode inside. But what has happened is that the person has internalized a false belief about themselves and fused into that false belief. And that's how they get caught. They were never that thought. They were never that image of them. Before they met this arsehole, they didn't believe that. But gradually, the nastiness is massaged into the person until they come to believe this is truly me. And then they're paralyzed and can't find anything more of themselves. They are prisoners of an idea. That's how we catch people. It's not that ideas are wrong. It's not that concepts are wrong. But you can use them as a basis for enjoyment, connectivity, freedom. Or you can turn them into the freezers, the solidifiers, the density makers of this world. So, on this level of ignorance, we tend to collapse into believing that language is true. So, when you say to your mum when you're a kid, Mom, I don't like school, she probably says, well, you just have to go. Nothing to do about it, you just have to go. You shouldn't say, that's just an idea. That's an idea. You have lots of ideas, I have lots of ideas. What is your mind when you have that idea? Maybe you had that mum, I never had that mum. I just had a mum who made corrective ideas to rectify my ideas to get me to go in the right way. So me as a potential of different interpretations of the world was encountering parents and teachers who were almost like taking this wild river of life and putting it into a sluice to drive it down to the mill so that I became a productive member of society. And you learn to take your place in the social field. You're now imprisoned, and every day you make yourself as a useful person. But you're also simultaneously that tumbling river. The freshness is there. Now, we have to earn a living, so we have to do different kinds of jobs. Some of them are not so easy. But the freshness and the constraint are inseparable. They're not two things. You're still fresh when you're in a particular formation. If you see the freshness is the manifestation of this moment from the ground, this moment from the ground, this moment from the ground. It's always about how you take it. There's quite a tradition now of people doing in Qigong different kinds of standing practice. And one of the lineages comes from a master of the previous generation who was arrested in China and put into prison, and he was manacled onto a wall. And at first he's kind of thinking, what do you do with this? And he thought, oh, I have to stand. I'll stand. So he stood for years with the manacle. I'm standing. And that's such a small tilt, isn't it? But it shifts everything. I'm standing. I'm not a prisoner. I'm constrained, but I'm free. I stand. And it's a very similar thing that we need to do. Because the outer forms of life are often nailed down. You may have social obligations, family obligations, health issues, and so on, so that your freedom to reinvent yourself is limited. But within the particularities of your life, here I am. So, on to the fourth level of ignorance. This is called the ignorance of the mental dullness of not recognizing karma, which means that we are in the world, doing what we do, and imagining that it's just this, that we get away with things. So there's been quite a debate in the last years of whether Britain should pay some compensation to the family of slaves. When slavery was abolished in Britain, we paid compensation to the slave owners because of the loss of their chattels. But there was no money paid to the slaves who had the real shit deal. We haven't paid compensation to the colonies that we went to and took the natural resources from. And certainly not to the natives. None of them are left from Tasmania who were annihilated, or the Australian Aborigines, or any of the tribal peoples across the world who've had their lands taken away, been tortured, forcibly converted, and so on. None of these people get compensation. These things happened. Read about it in the history book. Oh, these things happen in life. It's sad. So we refuse a cause and effect relationship. And of course we then maybe wonder why different countries now get disturbances of various kinds. From the Buddhist point of view, everything is alive and interconnected. You can't just ignore things and pretend they never happened. There are consequences of national organization, of the racist attitudes that are in many people, the sexist attitudes that are still very strongly there. We see the rise of anti-Semitism. We see the rise of hatred towards Muslims, because we say, you are not us, and therefore you should behave. There's a special deal for you. This is all created out of this conceptual structuring that was on the third level of ignorance. Because we've got your number, we know what you're like. So when you act on that basis, you start to accumulate karma, this kind of activity which is driven by bias, which is seeking my benefit, and sometimes in its more negative form, your loss. I want to win over you. I want you to be defeated. And then they have the consequence, and if I get away with it, that's good. The history of warfare is truly humiliating for us as human beings, I think. You know, in the First World War, you had cavalry regiments, the noblest, the ones who often had, royalty in their ranks, on these beautiful, beautiful horses with a lance charging against tanks. They had Maxim machine guns just mowing down these horses. So many animals were killed in the First World War because people believed that to be a cavalry officer is the creme de la creme. You're right at the top. This is the way to be a proper soldier. It's a way to be fucking stupid. Stupid. Because you're in the bubble of the cavalry. 200 years our regiment's been there. We did this, we did that. We have our battle honours on the wall, drinking in the mess with a gold cup stolen from India. Annihilated. That's what karma is. It's a kind of blindness to the world. In war, the best thing is to have better guns than the other people. If my gun can fire 2 miles and your gun only fires 1 mile, I'm ahead and you're dead. It's that simple. Modern warfare is ghastly. All these drones everywhere, just filth. But it's our traditional victory. Might is right. It's a Machiavellian structure. So inside karma, there's no understanding of that at all. Karma, as for ordinary people, is getting away with it. Getting away with it. All these big telecom companies that don't want to pay any taxes in Britain. You make your profit here, but you don't want to pay your taxes here. And they get away with it because the government doesn't want to stand up to them for all sorts of reasons. These facts are everywhere. You have to join the dots and think, getting away with it is what human beings want. And getting away with it means, if I'm not found out, if I'm not arrested, if I'm not persecuted, I won. Karma says, it's not like that. These tendencies are operating inside you, and they manifest as your personality, as the context that you experience. You never get away with it. Which is why also we don't need to punish other people too much, because most issues are self-punishing. So when you challenge someone about their bad behavior, you're inviting them to awaken to the negative consequences of their action. It's not about punishing people, but challenging people and calling them to account, saying, behaving in this way is not a good idea. That is very ethical. Because otherwise, if they think they've got away with it, the consequences will hit them much later and it will be unpleasant. So these are the 4 stages of ignorance, and they happen, if you like, historically, which is how we find ourselves here, but they also happen moment by moment. So we'll have a break now, and then we'll look at it a little bit in relation to meditation. If you do sitting practice with an interior focus, so that you're maybe just gazing down the line of the nose and you are, as it were, being with yourself, then getting up from the meditation is a different kind of experience, because you're moving from connecting just with what you take yourself to be to having to connect with more complicated phenomena. But when we do the practice sitting with an open gaze, with our senses open, we're not blocking anything which is arising. We're not privileging inside or outside, and gradually these categories become less and less relevant because we are in the field of experience which includes us. So it means then when you move from sitting to moving about, talking with other people, there should be less and less disruption because everything is already on the inside. So you've been sitting here with the presence of other people. So in the break, you start to talk to someone, and they're talking about various aspects of their life, what they're involved in, and so on. Who is this someone? What are you actually engaging with? You see in front of you a face, and the face is moving with different kinds of expressions. You get a sense of their breathing and how it is. You hear the tone of their voice, their interest or non-interest. There is a showing. You are receiving a showing. You impute, this is the showing of someone. I am talking with someone, some other person who is like this. Then you come to a conclusion and you sum it up. But if you don't do that, if you just stay with the actuality, there is shape, colour, sound, different kinds of gestures. No one is there. No one is talking with you, and you are not a person talking to someone else. What does that mean? It means that you experience the quality, the unique, specific quality of this person and how you are constellated by them. As you talk with different people who are here, in each conversation, you become a new person. You are reborn. You experience the freshness of yourself if you don't start from an assumption. But if you start with the assumption, I'm me, I know who I am, oh, this is interesting, or this is not so interesting, you start from a position, and then you're trying to work out what is the positioning of the other person. And you're always then returned to yourself. If it's interesting, maybe it's a new layer that you add on to your perception of yourself and of the world. If it's not so interesting, maybe you seal yourself off. This will soon be over. But if you actually open, what you're having is like a bath. The other person is like a waterfall. Words coming out, movements. You engage with that, and then you engage with something else, and you engage with something else. There's no one there to get. There's no inner essence to be got. But if you receive them, the receiving of them allows you to receive another aspect of yourself. Because as you receive them, you speak in this way. You feel in this way. And this has never happened before with this person. So each moment, each interaction is fresh. It's refreshing. So, in this way, the freshness of the ground, the never stale openness of awareness reveals a fresh field of experience, which is always just this, and then you interact with a person and you experience this. You can't at the end of that conversation say, I know this person, I know more about this person, because what is the person that's holding this projection? What you're holding is your image of the person, what in psychoanalysis they call object relations. You have constructed an image of the other, and the more you talk with them, the more you inflate and enrich your image of the other until it expands to such an extent that you never see the other person again, because you're always relating to your image of them. So you can release them and have a non-cumulative mode of connectivity. Because the more we build up images of people, we start to feel we could appropriate them. We could catch hold of something essential about them. We could know them. But actually, all I'm knowing is my own mental activity. Because they are arising due to all kinds of influences, and in the next moment will be something else. We're on the very edge of language here, because our language always brings us back to the sense, I'm looking at someone. There is someone there. So I see a shape, I see expression in the face, and it appears to me that there is somebody there, that there's someone expressing themselves. And what this practice would open us to the possibility would be is that what is expressing is the potential of emptiness. Again and again and again and again. And in this way, by not constraining myself into a fixed pattern, I can give freedom to other people not to be in a fixed pattern. And so there starts to be the possibility of new. Each moment is new. Each moment is a new beginning, because the last moment is gone. It's actually gone, but we have extracted some kind of pseudo-essence from it. There's some trace, like a snail leaving a slime track, some trace of the other, which we then gather up with our little spoon and put in a jar. So, oh, this is Jenny, this is Mary, this is John. But it's not them at all. This is a dead trace. This is like, falling in love with someone's dandruff and putting it in a jar. It used to be my beloved. They're gone. That moment is gone. Whether there will ever be another moment, we don't know. Oh, but I'd like to see them again. But did you see them now? Did you actually see them? Did they reveal themselves to you? Or were you busy with selective attention, building up your image of them? That's at the heart of it. Because if somebody can see us with fresh eyes, we are encouraged to see ourselves with fresh eyes. And if we start from the position of knowing what we're like and what our beliefs are and so on, and we meet people with very different beliefs, and we want to be true to ourselves, then in order to be true to myself, I have to say, you are unacceptable to me. My pot is very small and very well defined. So fuck off. Well, this is not a welcome. The question is, how big is the pot? The ego's pot will always be small. Awareness has no limit. It's an infinite mirror. It's an infinite showing. So this is the implication of this understanding of ignorance for meditation. We go back to the very first stage of ignorance, this somethingness. So you're sitting in the practice, there's an event, thought, sensation, whatever arises. You're already formulating it when you think it's a thought or a sensation. You've already pulled it into you've added a particular depth to it, which it may not have in itself because it's already vanishing. It's just this, just this, just this. But how will I know what's going on? Do you need to know what's going on? Just open and empty. Mind is like the sky. The wind's blowing this way and that way. Some rainbows, some clouds, some storms. I am the sky. I am the sky. But I don't want to be just that. I want to be me. In order to be me, I have to not be the sky, and I have to try to control the weather. And that's then very hard. I want more rainbows than clouds. And I want cirrus clouds, or friendly, light cumulus clouds. So you send in your menu, you phone up Buddha Takeaway and say, make me this kind of person. But it doesn't work out. We are as we are. And if we enter into judgment about ourselves, we're critical about ourselves, we try to improve ourselves, all this does is increase basic dualism. There is self and other. There is subject and object. It's not that they are not arising, but they're arising as the play of the mirror. These are reflections. These are like the reflection of the full moon in water. They're like a mirage. When you're in the summer, if you see in the road in front of you this glistening water, something is there. To say it's not there would be blind. To say it's really there would be wrong. It is there and not there simultaneously. A rainbow is there and not there simultaneously. You can't catch a rainbow, and yet it shows. So when we're talking with people and relating to them, there is the showing of their rainbowing, their display, that we are display of this openness. We're not a person. And the more we are receptive to each other's display, the more relaxed we can be, the more playful we can be, the less definitive we can be, and so new possibilities arise. But of course, if you take up this view, you don't know what will happen. And very often that fact or that intrusive idea creates anxiety. But I want to know. I want something to cling to. So if we go back to the first ignorance, something is there. What is it? It's this. Yeah, but what is it? So in the general Buddhist teachings, they say the beginning of samsara, the beginning of our endless existence is ignorance and thirst or craving. We are ignoring the openness of the sky and that this cloud has emerged in the sky and will dissolve back into it, or this reflection has come in the mirror and will go back into it. And we've taken it as being something. And then we have a thirst that it be other than it is. I want this to be reliable. In the Bible, it says, that Peter is the rock on which Christ builds his church. Peter betrays Christ 3 times. That's a very unstable rock. As it says in the good book, don't build your house on sand. We are all sand. We are just flowing, flowing, flowing. Better not to build houses, but how would you live without building houses? One of the great persecutions of teenagers is the insistence by their mother in particular that she knows who they are. And the child is saying, you don't know. Go away. Leave me alone. Take your fucking head out of mine. Keep your thoughts to yourself. I am me. I am not who you think I am. But the mother has started with a tiny baby, and in order to keep the baby safe, she had to suffuse the baby with her thoughts, because she had to believe that when the baby's crying in the night, she's able to identify, is this really a dangerous experience the baby's having, or is it just a bit of wind or something? So having that definitive knowledge, which could be life supportive, can easily turn into something quite invasive and controlling. If you have children, who are these children? You don't know. You know what they show. And very often it's long time after the fact that you find out the kids have been having a difficult time at school or being bullied or something, because kids often don't want to say. They have their world, the world of the playground. It's not really a world that the parents engage with. Now, this is so interesting. Someone who you spend a lot of time with, you don't know. Should you try harder to know? When they're out at school, you go through their bedrooms, they have a little diary, have a read, oh my God, this is not good. Not a good idea. You don't know them. I'm living with people I don't know. They will show, and they will show differently, and I will never see all of them. So that goes back to something we touched on earlier about totalization, a summative account. I can add up all the facts that I have about you, and then I know who you are. I've caught you. This is murder. This is absolute violence towards the other. All I have is some wisp of you, some whiff of perfume in the air, some echo. Who you are is uncatchable. This is our basic freedom. I cannot catch myself. You cannot catch me. Why are we attempting to catch? But I need you. I want you. What for? What on earth are you going to do with me? What do you want me for? Oh, I want you to be the one who will fulfill my wishes. So you don't actually want me, you want your me. And you want me to be your me. But if I'm your me, how can I be my me? So then you have a conflict. So relationships usually begin with fusion and then confusion, because you think, what the fuck? I know. If I had known this about you, I wouldn't be here. Because it was imaginal. So this is what meditation can do. When you see how in an anxious moment you are willing to create a whole elaborated city in the air, something that doesn't exist. You think, oh, this is just what it says in the Dharma text. It's illusion. They talk of a city of the Gandharvas. It means like a dream-like city which is created. It doesn't exist. It's just a mirage. Who you think the other person is, that's a mirage, because they appeared like this in this moment. That's what you got. If you're there and you enjoy it, if you have an aesthetic opening and availability, wow, there's just this. Oh, but you're so nice, I want to see you again. Who do you want to see again? Your conclusion about the person. It doesn't mean that, of course, you can't enter into relationships with people, maintain connectivity. The question is, who are you connecting with? With the potential. And you don't know how the potential will be, and the other person also doesn't know how their potential is going to be. One of the things that the French analyst Lacan said was that the desire of the analysand, the person who's in psychoanalysis, their desire is to be the object of desire of the analyst. So the patient is listening and trying to find out what it is that the analyst likes, and then to transform themselves into that one, because they want to be the true beloved, the best patient, the special patient. And you get a lot of that. It's the fabrication of the image of myself, what Jung would call the persona. You have the real self, which is always complex and self-contradictory and confusing, and the facade, the false self, which, because it's a construct like a mask, can be maintained and reiterated again and again and again. But if you live in a mask, no one will ever see you. Oh, but if they saw me, they wouldn't like me. Okay. So you prefer to be dishonest in yourself in order to have close contact with someone who's too fucking stupid to know that you're doing a little drama for them. And you call it love? That's very sad. This person doesn't see you. Partly because you don't show it, and partly because they don't see. They look for what they want, and you say, yes, it's me. But you're off balance. You betrayed yourself in order to be wanted by somebody who doesn't see you, doesn't get you. This is tragic, and it's very, very common. Because we want to have approval. We want to have validation. I exist as me, and it's fine. I am lovable as I am. Dharma's coming in right across that. He's saying, A, you don't exist. B, you are not lovable. People have a capacity for love, and they also have a capacity for hate. Generally speaking, love and hate are born together, and if somebody loves you, sooner or later they'll hate you. So, what is it you want from other people? Maybe there are no other people. Maybe you are moving in a field of light, of appearances and emptiness, of sound and emptiness, visions arising and passing. We are creatures of light, of delight. It's enjoyable to be playful in this interplay of potential as it unfolds, but we want something more substantial, something to take home, something in the doggy bag. But will you care about me? Do you think of me? Please don't think about me, because I'm not something to be thought about. If you want to meet me, then meet me. But if you think about me, who are you thinking about? So interesting. You are thinking about your idea of me, and that is not me. And the more you think about me, the more you thicken your image of me. You lose me by thinking about me. Isn't that amazing? You see it with art as well. You can study a painting, if you go to art school, you read all about it, then you go to the gallery and you look at it, and you vomit all your learnt knowledge onto the poor painting, which can't answer back. And if you had gone without knowing anything, the painting might have had a chance of actually coming through your eyes and entering your heart. Knowledge is a defense against open contact. And in our culture, knowledge is highly privileged. So we come to this question of, could I trust intuition and spontaneity? Will I find my way? Well, you've already been living 80% of your life in an intuitive, spontaneous way. You go into the supermarket, you look around, oh well, maybe you have that. Something takes your fancy and you go this way or that way. You didn't exactly know what you were going to get. That's why having a shopping list is quite wise, because in the shop there are all kind of interesting things. And you come out of the shop not with the thing you had gone in to get. Why is that? Because we are responsive creatures. We are touched and moved, and then we're into something. From an ordinary framework of having to be reliable and solid and a safe pair of hands, this is bad news. But actually, our Prime Minister is not a safe pair of hands. Donald Trump is not a safe pair of hands. The world leaders are nuts. They're out of control. They're maniacs. Look at President Assad. He bombs his own people and his own country. I mean, it's one thing to go and bomb other people's country, but to barrel bomb your own people just near where your own bloody palace is, to blow up half your own capital city, that's pretty remarkable. That's really, really crazy. This man is nuts. And in Turkey, everywhere, crazy, crazy people. So where is this fantasy that rational thought is determining what's going on? The World Bank? The IMF? Think that their decisions about funding of foreign interventions is wise? If you look, wow, this is weird shit. We imagine that we are rational. We imagine that we are sane. We imagine that we are doing our best. Nonsense. We're just here. And if we're not here, where are we? We're in an other world, a mental world. And most of the time, we think that's the real world. That's why Mr. Trump is incredibly helpful for meditators. If you watch him giving a speech, he is not there. He's speaking to people who aren't there. He's speaking primarily to born-again Christians. He himself is not a born-again Christian. But he has his people who will vote for him. So he's speaking to those who will hear how he is. And he spins everything in terms of being re-elected and being re-elected. He's out for himself. He's up for himself. He's crazy. Our Prime Minister is probably going to be pretty similar. These are irrational people. Irrational people. When there's a tragedy and the spokesman comes from the NHS and they say, 10 children have died in this hospital, what have you got to say about that? Well, we have instituted reforms and from this day on. That's not the fucking question. You were off. You're not on the job. You were gone. And these people died, and you want to say we've improved our procedures. You hear this again and again. The inability of people to say, I fucked up. So if we can all say, I fucked up, I don't get it right, life's a bit of a mystery, then you can be fresh. But if you endlessly have to pretend that you're more rational, more logical, more efficient than you are, you get absolute confusion. So we have this bizarre thing where you can be the CEO of a big company, your basic salary is £5 million a year, you're on bonuses, the value of the shares is going right down, you're losing contracts, and you get your bonus. The king is dead, long live the king, because the CEO must be the big guy. Deception is everywhere to hold in place the illusion that people are grounded and clear and know what they're doing. Knowledge is overprivileged, it's a fantasy. What we have is direct experience. Receiving and responding. Receiving and responding. And the veil that stops that is knowledge. Because the thing about knowledge is it's always out of date. One of my earliest memories was I don't know, it must have been maybe 4. And my aunt, who hadn't seen me for a long time, came to the house, and I was out playing in the street, and I came into the house. And she said, "Oh, James, what have you done with your curls?" Because before I had blonde curls. "What have you done?" I burst into tears and ran upstairs into my bedroom. I was hiding under the bed. "I've done something, I've lost my cat." It's like that. Because she had in her mind some image of me. And, a year had gone by or something, and I didn't look the same. And it's such a shock, isn't it? You encounter the sense that other people know you, and you're not that person. And if you're a small child, you tend to take it into yourself. I've done something wrong. I should be the one that they expect me to be. And that's the terrible plasticity of children who are bending themselves to please parents, even if the parents are drunk or abusive or predatory. So you have to see this in ourselves, that having an image of ourselves hides us from the spontaneity of being ourselves. That we have to maintain a self-image, but the image is always out of date. It's been constructed with aspects of the past. And to be free of an image is very, very important. But how can we do that when other people want us to be guarantors of the safe continuity of their existence? Reassure me that life will be okay. No. I'm not entering that game. Life is not okay, and life is not safe, and we don't know what will happen. Now I'm feeling anxious. That's not my fault. You have a reasonable, intelligent anxiety on the basis of how it is. So, life is unpredictable. What would you like to do? Smother it in cement? Imagine that the whole world is Chernobyl, and we'll flatten the whole fucking thing? That's one solution. Or, learn to shift your ass. Move with the moment. You will have to be flexible to live in this world. In my time, the shipyards in Glasgow have closed, most of the coal mines have closed, the fishing industry in Britain's decimated, so much of the industrial production in the Midlands is gone, the factories are closed and closed and closed, and it's as if these things hardly happen. These were personal tragedies. But actually, they are, nobody knows what's going on. High-speed train up to Manchester? Yes, no, we don't know. It costs a lot of money. Should we do it? Should we not do it? Nobody knows. Everything's a gamble. So how do you live with a gamble? The ground of everything is open and empty. Nothing is guaranteed. If nothing's guaranteed, the past cannot tell me what to do. That is to say, the past, which is for me an idea, what I remember of how it was before, that can't guarantee how I should be now. So how will I live? With your eyes open and your ears open and your nose open, receiving the world and responding to the situation. Winston Churchill in the 1930s was going on and on and on about armament, rearming Britain after the First World War. And many people said, it costs so much, we don't have the money, we've had the Great Depression, the country's almost bankrupt. And he said, look at Germany, how many ships they have, they're catching up with us, how many planes they're making. They said, no, peace in our time. You just had to look and you could see somebody wants a war. You just had to hear. Adolf was saying, I like war, killing is good. He was saying it very, very explicitly, and people didn't want to hear. So what makes you safe is seeing and hearing, not an ideological basis or a hope, never again, never again. Is that a special mantra taught by the Buddha? Om never again, hung pen! Never again doesn't mean bugger all. It doesn't mean bugger all. What it means is, this is a shifting, moving world. Are you here? Are you relaxed? Are your senses open? Are you free to move? Then you stay alive. Then you work with different circumstances. But the idea that you can make yourself safe by wrapping yourself in a cocoon is very stupid. You cannot stabilize the flow of life. But you can be relaxed and at ease in the flow of life. So that's really all that this is saying, that ignorance arises from the desire to stabilize the flow of experience, to get hold of something. Myself, who you are. Now I know where I am. But actually you've created a whole stream of problems. Because you can't know who you are, because you are becoming. The ego is the mode of experience we could describe as becoming. Awareness is being. It's just aware. But the ego self is becoming. We become this, we become that, we become tired, we become interested, we become bored, we become lots of things. In the course of being here today, all sorts of things have arisen for you as you're becoming, as how you were in that moment and in that moment. That's very different from being. So I am becoming according to circumstances. This is not self-determined. This is co-emergent. But because it's becoming, arising and passing, to take an aspect of that and say, oh, this is the true me. This is who I really am. I like being like this. This must be me. That's a delusion. Because it's already vanishing. It's already vanishing. It's like that. The city I grew up in, Glasgow, doesn't exist. They knocked down so much of it in the 60s. The urban planning is so bizarre, these horrible new buildings they put along the Clyde. I don't know where it is, but it's not what I know as Glasgow. When I go back to Calcutta, it's not the Calcutta I knew when I lived there. Benares isn't the Benares I knew. Kilburn, where I live now, is every day is becoming not my Kilburn. That's what it is. But I know what it is. No, you don't. You just tasted the wave on its upward arc. And that wave has now descended. And it won't come back. All the places where we live are changing and changing. Even if you stay in the same house, the neighbours change. Something changes. You can't get it. There's nothing to get. So this is the heart of the Buddhist teaching. The cause of suffering is attachment. Attachment means trying to hold on to something. There are no somethings. Appearances are always fleeting. So how shall I be open and aware? Be with the flow of the manifestation, which includes yourself with other people. Co-emergence, co-becoming. It's not that I am becoming out of me. There isn't a self-factory making me. I emerge in relationship. And this is so difficult to get a handle on, that I me am a fruition, a showing. I'm not the basis. The basis of me is not me. That's weird. The basis of me is you, me. Because I become me with you. So as you, me is, me emerges. This me, not continuous me. So this me is you, me, and you and me are aspects of the field which is inseparable from the open, empty ground. And that's why if we're meditating with our open eyes, when we walk down the street and we encounter different people coming towards us, and we look in a shop window, we have experiences. We become interested or bored, or a bit shocked. Why would that be the case? You don't have to interfere with the flow of becoming. The key thing is don't merge into it and look for the true existence of who you are in a transient arising. Your true existence is the inseparability of these three factors. The open, empty ground. When you look for the mind, you can't find something. And yet the mind is ceaselessly displaying. This is the spontaneous display of existence. And within that, there is this moment, and this moment, and this moment. And this moment. Forever and ever. Forever and ever. On and on and on. So how will I live? Either on the beat or fucking up. That's a choice. But how do we fuck up? By missing the beat. And how do we miss the beat? By separating and listening to our own beat. We dance to a different drum. I want to be true to myself. Not a good idea. Remember in Hamlet, Polonius says to his son Laertes, "This above all things, to thine own self be true." This is irony. Polonius is not stupid. This is irony. Don't take it seriously. There is no self to be true. Polonius is a courtier. Courtier means arse licker. He says what the big man wants to hear because he survives. What's this self you're going to be true to? Imagine being a member of the royal family. How would you speak to Madame the Great Mother? Very difficult. There are so many conventions. This is some devil's choreography to be in that family. Because they have to show. They are pure facade. Pure facade. And the life behind the facade is not noble or gorgeous or glorious. It's unpleasant. But they're stuck having to pretend to be better than they are. We ordinary people don't have that. We can just be as we become. And as we become is not who we are. So this is the double move. Open, connected, always becoming something new. Not out of me, but out of you, me. Us, me. We participate in the formation of being this. And there's no separate existence to this. This is very different from the basis of British culture today. It's very different from what we learn in school. The advantage of following this view is that it can keep your mind light and bright and happy or at ease in all situations because you don't take it too seriously. Moving things move. Still is still. Awareness is still. It never moves. Everything else moves. Your body, your voice, your thoughts, your memories. This is always movement. If you try to make the moving still, you are acting against how it is. The Buddha wakes up when he sees how it is. Oh, moving and moving and moving. And he doesn't interrupt the flow of the movement. But when we think, I want to live life on my terms, I want to decide what sort of person I'm going to be and tell other people, I'm not going to put up with this. We make life so dense. We lose our playfulness. But how can I be happy when this tragedy has happened to me? Who is the recipient of the tragedy? Who has it happened to? Then you find, oh, this is my self-construction. This is my memory bank of hopes and how it was and how I thought it would be and so on. This is the one who is hurt. And you're here. And you're here. And here is always fresh. So this is at the heart of it. Nobody is causing us more trouble than ourselves. You get this in the early Buddhist text very clearly. It says, not mother, not father, not brother, not sister, not friend, not enemy. Nobody can help you more than yourself. Not mother, not father, not brother, not sister, not friend, not enemy. Nobody can harm you more than yourself. This is amazing because it brings it right back here, moment by moment. I'm grasping, I'm constructing, I'm projecting my activity. I'm doing this. I'm making the world obscure by my own vomit. All these ideas, thoughts, interpretation. Now I can receive. Now I can receive. Less activity, more receptivity, more joy.